This podcast is brought to you by Podbean. Podbean is the easiest way to create your own podcast. In fact, we use Podbean to host Zapped to the Past. Download the free Podbean podcast app to start, record, and publish your very own podcast in minutes. Podbean provides everything you need to run your podcast, and you can record and publish episodes directly from the app on your phone. Download the free Podbean app today. That's Podbean. Head on over to Podbean at www.podbean.com and use the code podcast21 for your first 30 days of podcast hosting for free. Check it out. And now let's listen to Zapped to the Past.
Hello and welcome to episode 49 of Zapped to the Past. I am Adrian Mills and I'm joined as always by Graham Raddings. If you have not listened before, well then this is a podcast where we discuss games that were released for the Commodore 64. Last week, we looked at our second batch of games from the issue 23 of Zap 64, which we are in no way affiliated with, and were angered by Agent Orange, put out by Peter Shilton's Handball Maradona, and vexed by Nosferatu the Vampire. This week, we conclude our look at the games in March 1987, along with an excerpt from our very pleasant chat with Chris Abbott about all things C64 music, which is quite good. I quite enjoyed that chat.
Very enjoyable.
Hopefully you do as well.
Very
It
enjoyable.
was very good. So anyway, Graham, tell us what we have going on in this episode.
In this enormous fried onion smelling, vomit-inducing, attraction-packed, teeth-itching, nougat and cinder toffee stalls crammed travelling funfair of an episode, we grab our best BBC Model B cloning cloths and gently rub our copies of Balderdash until the decidedly similar Repton 3 appears, take off our pants, swing our cats, waggle our poles and bang our heads as we go into man-o'-war mode for a boring game of blood and guts, and walk to the right and keep on walking and shooting as we dive into the Boogie Wonderland-inspired elementally confusing Chameleon. We also take a trip down 1K memory lane with the 70s tech-inspired racing shitburger, Street Machine, explore the icon-powered jaunty merits of a relatively player and football-free football game in the crazy scoring world of Footballer of the Year, and go for a single-colour jump on a platform or two while avoiding a wasp in the empty void nonsense of Zub. If that gravity-defying gut-punching trip on the Vomitron hasn't quite filled your desire to centrifugally rotate, and you feel that smashing in a bag of candy floss and heading to the regurgitator is on the cards, we also punch and kick our way through HMP Deja Vu on a 3-level prison break sprint in the orally stunning but visually uninspiring Knucklebusters. Explore the multiversal, mind-bending world of the 8-bit Upside Down in the decidedly well-drawn but otherwise totally meh double take, before finally parking our car in Average Avenue, walking through an uninteresting park past some dreary ducks to find the mediocre building for a game of boring with the tiresome Tiger Mission. No amount of gargantuan copyright-infringing stuffed toys won from the 5 quid ago hooker duck are going to make this lot of games a more palatable batch of average. Best grab a ticket for the Spine Snapper and say farewell to your colon for a while.
Marvellous. Marvellous, marvellous, marvellous. I'm sure it's all going to be lovely.
Delicious.
Lovely fun and games we've got coming up. Without further ado, let's move into the first one, shall we? I think we should. Let's go on. Graham, tell us all about Repton 3, which, as much as it sounds like it, is not a Doctor Who villain or world.
Take a day trip to Repton 3. So, this is a Balderdash type game. Inspired is one word you could use.
That's a word you could use, yeah. You could use inspired.
I am going to be a little bit kinder to this, and I'll tell you why. Because this is based on a BBC Model B game that was created by somebody called Tim Tyler when he was 16. So, fair play to Tim Tyler, because that,
absolutely.
And as much as it might be a blatant, I don't say rip-off, but heavily inspired variant of Balderdash. I don't know that Balderdash ever made it to the BBC macro. I don't know, and I don't know. But what I do know is that this game follows the basic central general principles of Balderdash. It's a bit more zoomed in, but this one is actually, the C64 version is actually developed by Matthew Atkinson at Superior Software. So the original Repton, not Repton 3, was Tim Tyler. This is kind of Matthew Atkinson's version later, because I don't think Tim Tyler by this point was interested in programming. At 16 years old, I'm guessing he found other interests, like we all do around that age. And you could snap all of his bed sheets in half and all of that.
There were many socks died getting us these plans.
Horrible, yeah. His gym sock drawer was always at least 6 short of a pair. Anyway, 6 short of a pair sounds like a really odd branch of mathematics, but we'll just go with that. So, but he did design some levels.
Also
of that.
makes no sense.
It doesn't matter in this. It's all.
It's like -5.
My joke was heavily inspired by the Boulder Dash series of games, but not ripped off. So, Repton 3 involves retrieving treasures from a cleverly constructed maze of traps, falling rocks, and avoiding monsters, and it's Boulder Dash. The game requires dexterity, logical thinking to solve its puzzles over its lovely 24 levels, its lovely 24 Boulder Dash-looking levels. And so this is the second sequel, obviously, in the classic Repton franchise. I wouldn't say that it was a franchise, really, with 3. I'd say it's just there's 3 of them. This one actually contains a sprite editor. Is there 3 of them? More than 3 Reptons? I don't know.
There's way more than 3.
Imagine it. Maybe it's a game that persisted. I don't know quite how, but... So this is the Repton game, and it's basically Boulder Dash in different clothes. There's a sprite editor and a level editor in this, so you can design and play a bit like Boulder Dash Construction Kit, only nowhere near as good or intuitive or as much fun. So apparently, and I'd never played the other Repton titles to know it, but this is better than the others. So apparently the levels are larger. There's some different enemies like creeping poisonous fungus, which is in Boulder Dash, and that grows at land rates. Time bombs, which also come from Boulder Dash, and time capsules, Boulder Dash. And there's even puzzles in a different dimension, Boulder Dash. So I think it's just basically, it's a Boulder Dash clone, and all right, it exists. Now, we've seen this sort of thing happen where a game that's better on the C64 already exists, and so some bright spark at Superior Software thought it'd be a good idea to release this version of it that's a BBC game. It's not a good idea to do that, because number 1, Boulder Dash is better. Number 2, Boulder Dash was the original. Number 3, the Boulder Dash Construction Kit is better on the C64 by miles than Repton 3. And so while it might be great on the BBC, and that's all well and good, and maybe there wasn't a Boulder Dash to play on that, that's fine. This is not required on the C64 in my view. Simply not. And at $9.95, you would never, ever knowingly choose this unless for some reason you went mental and you just had some kind of hysterical seizure in a shop, or somebody had put, for some reason that nobody really understood, they'd put the Repton 3 tape in the Boulder Dash box when you went to buy Boulder Dash. And you
had a full-on Repton episode.
Yeah, you'd have gone full-on, Repton. So I just thought that, why would I play this on a Commodore 64? There's a better game out there. And we had that with that Psychastria, didn't we? Where
we did.
Uridium existed, so why would you play Psychastria? Well, this is just, and I think it might even be the same people, maybe. I don't know whether that is actually, but it's the same logic being applied.
I don't think it is.
No, but yeah. Kudos, hats off, tip and wink and all the rest of it to Tim Tyler for his 16-year-old Boulder Dash-inspired original game, but a massive slap across the arse cheeks of Matthew Atkinson at Superior Software for this bloody Boulder Dashing turd that he's created. So, no, I didn't like it. I like Boulder Dash. What about you?
Yeah, it's BBC Boulder Dash, that's what I put. It's
BBC Boulder Dash, and now on BBC One. Boulder Dash. I mean, Repton, damn it.
Get it right. Your guide, is Repton, here's a question, is Repton the name of the character? Or is it? Because Boulder Dash makes sense.
Because you're dashing around
boulders. This is not a ton of reps. Because that's like...
or 3.
Because that's like doing, lots of exercise. This is not that. So I presume that Repton is the thing.
3 reps isn't a lot, to be honest. But
no, I said a ton of reps.
Right. Yeah, a ton is a lot, yeah. Stupid game logic. That makes no sense.
Yeah, so is Repton the actual creature?
It must be, I think it must be.
So yeah, scrolling mazes, collect diamonds, avoid falling boulders. I've written exactly the same. It's like Psychastria. Why would you have this on a machine when Boulder Dash Construction Kit exists? Yep. The graphics are pretty primitive because they look like the BBC version.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever's done a conversion of this has done a very good job in making this game look like a BBC. Because it looks exactly like it as far as I can make out.
Yep.
The sound is annoying, and if you have Boulder Dash in any format. Just to say that the Repton universe, there is Repton 2, Repton 3, obviously, around the world in 40 screens, according to Wikipedia. The life of Repton, Repton Through Time, Repton Infinity, Repton Mania. Then we have Ego, Repton 4 in 1992. Then we have PC versions in 2003, 4 and 5 for Repton 1, 2 and 3. 2006 we have Repton Spectacular. Wow. 2010 iRepton.
Of course
and also Repton the Lost Realms. 2014, Repton's Mystic Challenge.
Oh, God.
Then we have Android versions of 1, 3, then 2. And finally, Repton's Journeys.
Why do I feel like by this point, Tim Tyler, if you went round to his house, it'd be like that guy in Itchy and Scratchy who drew the original Itchy and Scratchy?
I don't know. I think he's just retreated to the world of spirographs.
He's become Repton. You go into his house, he just looks like an ant and dives around his house, avoiding stuff. Like.
Yeah. The most fun I had in this game was that picture I sent to you.
Oh, that's where you wanged the Repton, yeah.
I just drew a purple wang on Repton. And
need to animate it.
I thought that was quite funny. I'd have to go back in because I've deleted it. Obviously, I didn't save it, but it's easy enough to do. I could do a flopping rep wang.
I think you should. There's the version of Repton they never made.
Rep wang. That's rep wang. Yeah. Well, I do remember this as a BBC release, and I remember a lot of people really raving over this, and that's fair enough if it's on that machine because it didn't have Boulder Dash. We've got Boulder Dash. I'm going to play Boulder Dash. It's as simple as that. Yeah. It's a better game. It's a better game in every sense. So a baffling release, this. Yeah. Just don't understand it. Rep wang.
Yep.
Rep wang wee.
Sorry, Tim.
Rep wang wee. That's tickled me. That's enough of cloned Boulder Dashes. Let's move along. Because the next one, oh dear. Well, we'll talk about it. So this is another one from Grieve Graphics.
Oh yeah, it is Grieve, isn't it? I forgot.
Yeah, it is. The makers of Craptured and 1943, 10 minutes later. So what we've got here is Medieval Decathlon in the form of blood and guts. Now, before I continue, just here, I've posted a couple of pictures because to start off with the title screen. So it's a multi-event game. We'll get to that bit. It's a multi-event game that you never knew you ever wanted, really. You never wanted this. Who knew it? You have to, the game starts... after when it loads up, with you having to pick from a cast of 4 characters. You have Nor, the stock cube.
The living stock cube.
Hawk, Nop, which I'm pretty sure is an op code in it.
It is, NOP, yeah.
Yeah, and Dog.
Yeah. Or
as I've put as a picture, and I will post this picture out, the members of Man o' War.
It totally is the members of Man o' War.
That's the band.
Oh,
that's the band Man o' War. So there's a picture... So the title screen has these 4 characters, Nor, Hawk, Nop and Dog. And there's actually an image which I found of the band Man o' War, and it's them. Spot the difference.
There they are.
They're just more burl.
More burl
less
and
pants.
Slightly less pants, yeah.
So there you go.
Goodness me.
So what is Blood and Guts? Blood and Guts it's a medieval thing. It's supposed to be a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's a tongue-in-cheek take on the multi-event game that we've seen quite a few of in our time doing this podcast. So I'll go through the events first of all. So once you've picked your character, it's quite tricky. There's a moment where it then automatically asks you to pick your second player. You have to pick the same character. If you don't, there's no way of sort of going no. You just have to. There isn't a no. You just have to pick the same character, and then it thinks, oh, you're only one player. Rather than just asking, do you want a 1-player or 2-player game? You have to pick the same character twice, which is odd. To once done, you can then either practice or compete in 10 events. So the first event is a Tug of War, which sees you waggling frantically to try and drag your opponent into a river. Yep. And they sort of fall into a river in a sort of slow staccato, singular frame of animation, just going downwards. You do a tower jump, which I've called the squat and launch.
Yeah. That squat definitely came from Craptured.
It really did, didn't it? So this is the squat and launch. So basically, you're at the top of a tall tower, you squat, and you launch yourself forward, getting bonus points for landing on your head. Then we have the rock roller, where you face off against... You've basically got to waggle the joystick and hit the fire button when you've got up enough waggle energy to push the boulder forward a little bit. Don't let the waggle energy get to the point or the boulder comes back and rolls back on you. The whole point is to get the boulder to the top of... There's 2 sort of paths going up at opposite angles. Whoever gets their boulder to the top pushes it down to the next one and wins the opposite one. There's beer drinking, which is glug and waggle. So
is he a German composer?
Hello, I am Glug and Waggle. I made the goddamn ring. Do you mean the goddamn ring? No, the goddamn ring. You Wagner? No, I am Glug and Waggle.
I am Glug and Waggle.
Glug and Waggle. I come from Glug and Fork. So yes, so this you pull down to. Or you push up, I think, to start glugging, and then you pull down, and then you waggle to swallow.
Never say that again.
Which sounds really dubious.
It's not the first time you've said that, is it?
Well, the ease with which it came out of my mouth says everything.
Yeah, God.
That's what she said. Then we have the human hit.
You glug, I'll waggle. Oh, dear. So where was we at? We at pole fighting or cat throwing? I can't remember which.
No, we're at the human hit,
right.
which is the target practice one. So a character has been embedded in a wall with just their head and arms and legs throwing through, and you have to lob stuff at it. Then we have the pole fighting, which is pointless thrusting on greased logs.
Sounds like
I'm not wrong.
That sounds like a Saturday night in Cleethorpes, that.
I'm not wrong. Actually, I've made a spelling error here. I put cat throwing, and then instead of writing discus, I've written discuss.
It's an essay title for some students.
Graham, discuss cat throwing.
Cat throwing, discuss. Well, all started here.
So that's like a discus in top down. Right. Man spins around and you press fire to let go at the right direction. Then we have the mountain walk, which is balance and walk and bounce. So you've got a character walking across a rope and you see a sort of forward version of them, and you basically got to, if they start leaning to the right, you've got to move the joystick to the left and keep them going and press fire to get walking again. First one to the middle and bounces up twice and down to bounce the character off, wins. Then you've got the axe throwing, which is just lobbing an axe at your opponent. First one to do it wins. And then you have the arm wreck, which is over the top waggle. So it's Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling. So that's it. So they're your events. In single player, this game is pointless. I found, as the computer is absolutely foolproof at everything.
Yep.
They're impossible to beat. I've got advanced waggling techniques. I'm very quick with my waggle. and I got nowhere near them. They were just ridiculous. So I'd be doing my best and be nowhere near the computer play, so it renders all the events pointless. 2-player might be all right, but anyway. The graphics, they're fine, I guess. They're better than what we've seen from Greed graphics so far. And the music's all right in places. I didn't particularly mind it. But the problem with this is that the humour only lasts a certain amount of time, and that is the first time you play each event. And after that, it's whether the events are actually any good, and we've done all these things better in other things. This is weak in comparison to other games like World Games, Summer Games, Winter Games, any of those, or even things like Night Games, if you want a sort of medieval sort of multi-event bashathon or something that's more fun. It could be a bit of fun in 2-player, but I didn't find that any of the events stood out, none of them. And it may be because of the stupid single-player, the always up against an opponent and you're always going to lose, and the joke wore thin very quickly, and the enjoyment wore thin pretty quickly. So all in all, it's got 56%. That's probably about right. This is painfully average, and if you're going to do a multi-event game, go play something else, because the one thing that this has going for it doesn't really have, and it's just sprites going for it and it gets a bit boring very quickly. What about you? How did you find it?
No, very much the same. This game really divided opinion in some of the research I did around it. Some people thought it was just, lay off this game, it's amazing. Others were like, it's just rubbish. Like, no, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. I guess it's, And I think what I took from that is your experience of this game very much depends on who you played it with. I could see this being a bit of fun as a one-off now and again if you had a couple of mates around and you'd left it plenty of time in between plays. Because if you couldn't play this game repeatedly a lot because it's pretty lifeless, and the humour will only, like you say, take it so far. I thought the graphic style was kind of reminiscent of an Epic-y style look and feel. It's the best they've done, but not amazing. It's not like as good as an Epic's one, but it's on that pathway. I thought the controls were generally fiddly, and there's no way you can compete with the computer. There isn't a way. It's not feasible. Varied enough events list, although a bit silly, and none of it's connected to anything really. So it's just a load of mini games, really, just themed around Manowar. I suppose I found the music horrific, and I can only imagine the loading of this would be a living hell because it was really slow on the system I was using it on the emulator. But it's, this isn't saying a lot, but it's better than It's a Knockout or Ninja Master. So it's better than those. And that's as much as, and that's like, that isn't saying it's great. That's just saying it's better than something that was utterly shit. So it's not, what I can say about this game is it's not shit, but it's very far from being as much fun as World Games, because just putting it in some kind of weird medieval-y type setting or with these weird character names and stuff and blood and guts, there were no blood and guts in it. And had there been, that would have made it more interesting. So if it really was a game where you could really do gross out things that would have made this game something quite interesting and unique. But because it's just medievally dressed, rock band members, leaping on their heads off a tower and a lot of it involves essentially waggle, 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 press the button, waggle, waggle, and that kind of logic. It's just, you runs out of steam after about the second event. And so I think it's just 56% bang on. It's oddly a game I'd never played either back in the day. I'd avoided it. It's never came across me.
Yeah.
And I think because I got World Games when it came out. And so if someone said to me, no one's ever said to me, have you got Blood and Guts, let's play that. I think if someone saw World Games, they're like, let's play that straight away. And so we'd never get a look in. So you would the only way this game would be played is if you didn't have World Games and you'd come to this first in some way, maybe, and you happen to like men dressed in their underpants. If those things are you're floating your boat, then this game, and then if you flip down the discs in your collection or your tapes and you saw It's a Knockout and Ninja Master, this is a good final piece of that shit triangle. So fill your boots with it. Just keep it away from me. I don't want to know anymore. So there you go.
There you go. That's Blood and Guts. It's not that great.
And there was no blood or guts in it.
No, there wasn't. No, I mean, there's a head chop right at the very end. You get your head cut off, don't you, with the guillotine? Yeah. But again, it's all very sanitized.
Yes.
It's just not particularly very good and a bit stupid, really. Why would you enter games where if you lost, you got your head chopped off?
Yeah, well, exactly. You wouldn't.
Yeah, silly. It is a silly game.
It is.
Anyway, that's Blood and Guts. So let's move on to our next one. Graham, rotate your eyes in different directions and tell us what you can see in many different ways and change your skin colour to match the wall.
I already have.
Where are you gone?
Who said that?
Hey, it's just a voice in the speakers. Tell us all about Chameleon.
I shall, yes. Beware the guy with the wangy eye, remember? Just general advice. Chameleon. Martin Walker in the house. Woo, woo, woo. So this is a Martin Walker game. First thing to say, this game's got some really nice sprite animation on the main character. I love the main sprite, the way he walks, his little sort of, his way his cape sort of flew about. And, and it was Martin Walker, wasn't it, that did Back to the Future?
And the first Rupert.
Yeah, and as much as the games weren't really good, the animation on the sprites, again, pretty good. Okay, I'm just saying that to lay down the groundwork for the game. So the game is a little bit confusing. Now, interestingly, there's a thing I'll come to about why it's confusing, and it's a quite funny story attached to it. This is an Electric Dreams game, isn't it? Another one, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, in this game, the elements fire, earth, air, and water control the world. They control the world. Maybe they control the world in your game. And someone has been tampering with the balance. Only the Chameleon, that's you, being made of flux, all right, can put this situation right by entering the limbo realm and organising stuff. Okay.
Organising stuff?
Just organising stuff. To get to limbo, you need to work your way through the 4 elemental realms. You travel to each realm on a quest to locate the hidden exit, and it allows you to progress. As you work your way through the side-scrolling realms, you are attacked by demons and deadly clouds of elements that are trying to drain you of your life force. You can shoot at these things attacking you, but you must use the right element, akin to Druid, so you can shoot the different enemies, and you can summon the different elements. You lose energy a lot in this game. I don't know if you noticed it when you played it, but you lose it all the time for pretty much everything. You can get it back if you shoot the enemies with the right element and then collect their power that they leave behind. If you move past the hidden exits, don't hide your exits. Just saying, it's a bad move for a game when you're looking for an exit. Don't hide them like that. You get a weird sound that plays. If you didn't know that existed, you would never know. But a little sound plays. And to progress, you have to prime the power points using the sign indicators on the level and walk past them. Or, in modern parlance, just keep walking to the right until eventually you just get to the next level. That's just what I did. So you got to traverse the levels quite some time, plodding, walking to the right. You fire spells in sort of directions controlled by the joystick and the fire button. I quite like the controls of the way you fired, and I quite like the sprite, and some of the graphics are quite nice. The backgrounds are okay. There's a kind of a nice parallax effect. The look of the game is quite okay, actually. It looks all right. So you've got to basically walk right a lot in this game. And as you work eventually through the different realms, you'll end up in limbo. When you get there, you've got to sort of shoot and get to the power points and survive long enough to make it to the next thing. And so it goes on, and so it goes on, and so it goes on. And that's kind of the idea of this. So the idea is that eventually you work your way through these things, balance the universe, and you being a chameleon made of pure flux can solve these problems and walk away from a completely game very happy. I don't think you're ever going to do that, because I was walking to the right a lot for ages and ages in this game, and I just kept going round and round in circles. So the game plays out, as I say, with the main sprite walking right. You can shoot kind of spells, press spacebar to change them different elements. You get attacked by varying different sprites and sizes. Again, the graphics and the look and feel of these are quite nice. They attack you. It's a bit like, it almost feels like a walking, plodding, side-scrolling shooter in a weird way. And there's some nice touches to the game. The graphics, some of the graphics look nice. There's quite a nice polish to it. It's weird, and it feels like doesn't quite feel like it knows what it wants to be. So there's side-scrolling shooter logic in some ways, and it's kind of leaning a bit on old Ultimate games in other ways, because there's the continuous bombardment of enemies. And I think it lies in some kind of cusp which perhaps doesn't quite work or favour it. It's different, and I thought there's some nice graphics and sounds in it, and that gives it a bit more currency over some of the more bog-standard stuff. And it does have some of that polish. And I think it's perhaps one of the more interesting games of this type, and it proves Martin Walker is a very capable graphic designer, graphics programmer. I just think the game's just lacking something. And in actuality, ironically, the game was lacking instructions because Electric Dreams didn't print all the instructions in the cassette inlay and the instructions for the game. And because they famously didn't do that, in the next issue of Zap, I think it's Martin Walker actually writes in and says, yeah, they didn't put all the instructions in. Here they are. So they actually publish the missing instructions in the next issue of Zap. But for this issue, they review what they get. They give it a reasonably high rating. I think it got 84%. And maybe you're giving it a bit less, actually. I don't know that it's as good as maybe 84%. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it is. But it's got all the look on the pizzazz. It just lacks a coherent game logic. And the actual wrappings of the game are a bit weirdly overcomplex for what it actually tries to be. And I think because of that, and without the instructions anyway, I think you'd have been clueless. So I think you'd have played this game, loaded it up, and you wouldn't have really known what the hell you were doing.
No.
So I think that's the shame of it all. I think in Martin Walker's head, it was a very clever game. And he obviously made it a reality in some way. I just think it always remained a little bit in his headspace and not really a playable thing for other people. What about you?
Yeah. I agree. Again, we do seem to be on the same wavelength with a lot of these things. It's another Martin Walker game, and like I said, there's been a fair bit of thought put into this. As you wander right and left trying to shoot various elemental enemies with the right element to power up some sticks to allow you to move through the 4 realms and get to Limbo. Okay, fair enough. The problem I have with it is that the game feels chaotic all of the time.
Yeah.
So there's always numerous sprites whizzing around the screen. There's a day-night cycle going in the background, sound effects that seemingly fire off for no reason, and mechanics that are tricky to implement with a single joystick. There's a lot going on constantly. There's no downtime. There's no space to sort of take a moment and go, oh, apart from if you do, then try and change your element. I think it may have been a better option to press the space bar to bring up the element switching.
Yeah.
You don't do it that often, so being able to click the space bar just to stop you and go, having to, as I found, holding the fire button and jabbing downwards 3 times, a tricky thing.
Weird, yeah.
It's a tricky thing to do in the middle of the action because it's incessant and it's non-stop. And I, like you said, and plus because the instructions, but even though I read the review, so I kind of had a clue of what I was supposed to do, and I just found it really not clear what I was supposed to be doing. I even watched a walkthrough on YouTube and tried to follow that, and what I was doing just didn't seem to be happening on the. I was like, it's just a bit of all over the place. None of the bars seemed to be going down, and I didn't know if I was doing it at the right time of day and just trying to survive. I made it through to the second world somehow, but I just found it just too chaotic to feel proficient at. In a strange way, this reminded me, I mean, there's defender elements, obviously, in walking left and right, and I see you Scribes on Shooter. It reminded me of the bit in Iridis Alpha, where you are on the floor when you change the creature on the floor and you're walking left and right. There's kind of an element, felt an element of that. And again, like Iridis Alpha, I didn't quite understand, not always clear what I was supposed to be doing. I can see what you kind of had to do essentially, but it just needed a slightly better control system. I like the visuals, same as yourself. I thought the visuals were really nice. The main sprite is great. The backdrops, the elementals are okay. Although I wasn't sure, I think in the second level, what the table thing is that moves towards you.
Weird.
On the thing. You have to shoot it twice and then it becomes the demon and then you get your power up. It's like weird.
Yeah, that means you're shooting it with the wrong element. If it turns into another demon, it means you've shot the wrong element, I think.
Yeah, probably. But it's so hard to actually change elements.
Yes, it is.
Even if you could just press 1, 2, 3, or 4 to flip through them, would have been probably more proficient.
Yeah.
I mean, Druid you could do it on the fly, couldn't you?
Yeah.
So again, just this simple thing of just being able to press 1, 2, 3, or 4 to flip between your elements. There you go, quite quick. Yeah, I don't know. There's something here, and I think there's a lot of thought gone into it, and it's quite interesting. But it needed to slow down, really.
Yeah.
And because the things are so fast moving about the screen all the time, and because they're quite randomly moving about, and because you can only fire in what seems like 8, I think up if you're facing left gives you slightly, but there's not many directions you can fire in, and sometimes they get locked in a position where you can't shoot them. By the time you get to a position where you can shoot them, they've moved. And it's, oh God. And then they've hit you, and then someone else has appeared, and then there's a thing on the bottom, and then and you're in a pool, and you're dead. Exploded. It's just too chaotic for me. I think just slow this game down, and you might have a better game. Because You don't need that kind of crazy action in the first level. Leave that to the fourth level when you've got some proficiency at the thing. But first level, making it that hard immediately is just a bad thing. And so that was what I took from this. I can kind of see why it got 84%, because if they did understand it and they had Martin Walker going, look, this is what you got to do, and this is, blah, 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 if it's written in. Because by the time they've sort of got the game, he's probably spoken to him. Yeah. So I get why they gave it that. And there is an original game here, and I think we'll come to this at the end of the episode where we'll have a bit of a chat about the big editorial that graces the front of this issue of Zap.
Yes.
And I think because of the originality on show here, they're doing something different.
Yeah.
Probably leads to that score, despite the game's problems.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But yeah, Chameleon, it's okay. It's get your head around it if you can, and I think you'll be in for a good time, but it's not going to be for everyone. No. Like Iridis Alpha.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a good call. All right, there we go. Chameleon. Let's move on. A couple more before we go for a break. Well, next up, Street Machine.
Yay!
Yay, Street Machine. So this was a budget release, right? And they got the price wrong because no one could have asked £9 for this in 1987, right? Right? Stop looking shadily from side to side, right? So what we have here is a top-down racing game with 8 cars, and I use the term cars in the the fact that they're single sprites and because there's 8 of them and they look like cars, I guess. And this is so if you imagine further down the line, like we said about Labyrinth, and not in the same way. The Labyrinth was okay, but it's a bit dull. But it's further down the line, we're going to get, or maybe it's even out by this point, Super Sprint, and then even later we'll get things like Micro Machines and things like that. So this sort of multi-car, small car on a top-down track, you view it straight down, and I know that's not Super Sprint, but it's more Micro Machines. But you go around this track, and that's what you get. The problem is it shouldn't be done like this.
No,
not like this. This is essentially a scrolling version of Grand Track 10.
Yes.
If you remember that? One of the oldest racing games.
Yeah, I remember that.
The oldest of old racing games and variants thereof. This is crap like that. Well, no, Grand Track 10's not crap because Grand Track 10 came from the mid-1970s.
Yeah.
And fair enough, they didn't have tech. We're 10 years on here and we've got something that's reminding me of that and not in a good way. Okay, so the title screen sees you pick one of the 8 cars on offer. So you basically pick 1 to 8 and one of the cars drives off and that's when you're out. They're all the same, bar the colour. So the game starts. You push forward to go faster, left and right to steer, and button for brake, and back for reverse if you need to. If you hit the scenery, you'll probably explode. If not, you're taken to an inexplicable damage screen.
Oh, that was mad, that damage screen.
Well, there are 70 elements on this screen, and you have a countdown going down. I'll try and describe this. So you have 70 elements, just text elements. So axles, just all the kind of things you have in a car. 70 of them. You have to flick between them. Whenever you stop on one, they'll have a damage rating next to them, anywhere up to 99. And you stop on them, and then that damage will start going down. You've got to but while this is going on, there is a countdown going down from 99 down to 0. You've got to get them all the damage parts underneath 30 in that while that timer goes down. So you're racing between them, sort of waiting on one, waiting for it to go to the two, going to the next one, waiting for it. It's boring as hell. If you don't get them below 30% damage, you get disqualified. You're out the race. So I don't understand. I just don't. I'd rather be out the race because this game is dreadful. The graphics are just basics. They're single color sprite. There's not even an attempt. They're just the same sprite, different color. There's not an attempt to make these cars any different. The sound effects are awful. That basic whiny, drivey whine that accompanies so many of these shit C64 driving games. That that.
Yeah.
It's got to be a budget game. It's just such a nothing, and it's so out of place. It's got 17%, and yeah, maybe lower. It's dreadful. There's no good. There was one point where I was playing it, and I was like, you know what? I'm starting to spin around this, and then I was like, no, I'm fooling myself. It's crap. And the handling's rubbish. It's just garbage. A really, really pointless. And £9. This is 4.5 kickstarts. It's just shocking. No. Did you? I mean, you warned me of this.
I did
several times in our chats before I got to it, and I was wondering, surely it can't be that bad.
No.
Yeah, it really was.
It's
really
worse
was.
than that, isn't it?
It's dreadful. Yeah. What did you think? How did you get
it's
on
garbage.
With
this? It's utter garbage. It's a rip-off as well. It's just rubbish. Absolute rubbish. It should never have been released. It's out of place. It's out of time, and clearly they were out of money. It's just rubbish. It has no place. This has no place in 1987. It had no place in 1983. I mean, goodness me, really? You're going to release something like this? I mean, if you're desperate to play sort of a top-down racing game, you've got BMX Simulator out there. And that is budget.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is just utterly... I mean, I didn't give it a lot of time. As soon as I started, it displayed the 70-odd item list of things I'd broken in my 3 seconds of racing. That was me done. I'm like, no, there's just no place for this game. It's utterly dreadful in every single way that it could be. I am not partaking of this turd-flavoured ice cream a moment longer. No. So I just switched it off and just prayed that I thought, maybe I imagined it. So I kept my eyes closed for an extra few seconds, reopened them, and it was still there.
It's still there.
No, it's just rubbish. And it shouldn't be. Again, it didn't get enough of a pasting in my book in Zap. I think they should have really laid into this, given it 2 or 3% for the crap that it is, and really showed them and given and sent a message, especially in an issue with a great big 2-page editorial about this kind of thing. But maybe they should have used this as a point of reference. It's just rubbish. No, I'm not going to give it any more time. Just avoid crap rubbish.
It is generally dreadful. Street Machine. Yeah, whatever. Garbage.
Rubbish.
Let's move on quickly. To our final game of this section. And Graham, what's it like being Footballer of the Year?
This is from the team behind Bulldog, Bounder, Future Night, Gremlin graphics. Yeah, so, hey, it's Footballer of the Year. Really lively intro sequence and title sequence to this. It's really bouncy. I was like, wow, okay. So you start by putting in your name, and then you choose a division and a league team, then a national team, and then you've presented with the 7 icons of control. So you've got a globe, which gives you your kind of stats, the general stats for the game so far. And you've got a football ahead that gives you your player stats, the individual player stats, and I'll come to exactly how this all ties together. You've got a scroll, which is your transfer cards, where you can buy and transfer. So you can buy and transfer cards for new players. So you can buy transfer cards for new players in there. You've got a football boot, which starts the season, where you can buy goal cards. And I'll explain what all this means. Then you get some shots at goal, and then you get the results service, which tells you what you've won or scored. The shots are played from a ball shoot at goal kind of point of view. You control the ball direction, etc. when you get to this kind of little arcadey bit. This is, again, when you've played the football boot icon. And the idea is you sort of shoot the ball into the goal and press fire to shoot and try and score, do that and win. Then you get to, it goes back to the menu again, and you've got a question mark where you can buy what's called incident cards, which is, they're akin to like a chance card in Monopoly. So you buy these cards and then incidents occur. So you can lose money, you can get transfers obtained, you can get extra cards, that kind of thing. Things happen, You've got an icon for saving the game. And then you've got a dead guy, I think, or a footballer that's fallen over, which is quit. So it's kind of a score a goal to get the money to go up the league kind of game. And that's kind of the basic principle of this game. Play through these icons. So as you get more question marks and you buy more incident cards, because you attain money from winning things, and as you do those and you buy more of those, more chance things happen, and then you can transfer players in, and maybe there's a game that's appealing to football fans. I'm not a football fan. I know you are, so maybe this appeals to you in some way. And I think it's lively enough to be interesting. There's a liveliness to it. It isn't sort of dead in the water. It feels kind of buoyant. So I can see it appealing to football fans. I'm not one of them, but it was actually pretty easy to get into as well, which is kind of novel for a kind of a semi-manager type game. Certainly better than the double, which we played in last episode, which I'm still waiting for. The Zapped criticism of this was that it was too easy, and I have to agree. It's stupidly easy to score the goals. I mean, there's no real challenge to them. Unlike other football games, where it's now impossible to score, you can't really not score in this. So you're always going to win, and if you always win, you're always going to get the best things, and there's no real challenge in it. The game just it's a kind of really nice, friendly game in that it doesn't challenge you with anything. It just presents you with loads of stuff that's good. So it's lively. It's not terrible. It's just not a wholly complete football game. It's just I think it's kind of missing something, and it's just an easy in sim. It's kind of a sim light. It's like the double. If you took all of the complexity away and the 6-hour waits for everything, it cuts it so fine. I think it cuts the football experience so far down to the bone with this to make it kind of just about the fun bit that it actually trims off too much of the fat of the footballness of it. And what you end up with is just kind of a ball in goal, collect stuff thing. And I don't think it really works in that way. And adding the leagues and the things to it is a bit of dressing that it doesn't really. It's there, but I don't think that at its heart this game was ever really designed to have those trappings. I think somewhere along the line it was a football game that got whittled down into what this became. So, did I enjoy it? It was all right. I mean, I'm not into football games, but I don't know if this is really, you could call it a football game. I don't think Footballer of the Year is a bit of a stretch because I think the idea is that your challenge is to become the Footballer of the Year overall by doing all of these things. It was all right. I mean, I think the best thing you can say is it's one of those games when because all the music and the sounds are all really chirpy, you're like, hey. But after you get past that, is there enough for a football fan? I don't know. What do you think?
No, there isn't.
I don't think there would be.
No, there bloody well isn't.
It's chirpy.
I would rather play the double on warp speed than this. This game is stupid. It's stupid. And it was supposed to be a board game, wasn't it? And then Gremlin bought it and turned it into this.
That makes sense now you say that, yeah.
Well, that's what it says in the very first paragraph in the sort of review in Zapped, so I'm going that's the case.
Yeah.
The scores in this game are stupid. And I like football. You know I do. I've always liked football. If you're going to make a football game, then at least make the scores representative, shall we say.
Yeah.
I can get behind a 3-2. I can even get behind a 4-2. A 5-3. My first game, I played as Barcelona. I was beaten 9-0 by Valencia. And then 9-0 by Anderlecht. This is stupid. In the second set of games, I chose to use a card for something I'd missed before I knew what was happening because it cut to the arcade when I went 8 when I missed.
No, it's a bit quick, yeah.
The next game, so I missed and then I lost. I can't remember what the score. The next game I scored, I still lost 8-6 to Inter Milan. This is stupid. This is just, I can't, when the scores of the game are so fundamentally broken, this isn't a football game. It's not a football game.
No.
And I think that's the thing. When you said they've trimmed it to the bone, what have they cut out? Yeah, they've cut the football out.
Yeah, they have. I said it's just not really that.
So there's a better version of this, which we won't review because it is a board game. We'll talk about it at the end. But there's a much better version of this kind of board game footballery type stuff that will come up that we'll have a sort of quick chat about at the end because I used to play that back then. But I never liked this because there's no football in it.
No.
It's not a football game. And I guess it's Footballer of the Year.
No
so you're just playing this. There's no anything. It's just, there are options to buy it, but it angered me because it's purporting to be this football thing and it's not. And it's so I think on one hand, if you come at this from maybe the angle you came at, that this jaunty, chirpy,
it's jovial,
bit of light, bit of fluff that don't take too seriously. It's just a bit of a laugh. Yeah, okay, I get that, but then don't purport to be a football game because it's not. It's not a football game, and so it is a, I don't know. Like you said, it's kind of some kind of life weird sort of be a footballer type sim with a bit of arcadey footballing things every now and again and cards and stuff to happen, but there's no reality to any of this. It's just some weird fancy thing. 9-0, bloody stupid. I was frothing at the mouth at the ineptitude of this stupid scoring system, and then I turned it off. Stupid game. So there you go. Give me football.
It's funny that after I'd played that game, I thought, is it me or is international soccer still just hanging in there as one of the best football games on the C64, even with all of these other variants? And how, if that's your template, why are they experimenting with it? Why don't they experiment with this? Because the double had a bit of an experiment of football in it, and there was another one that was a football experiment that didn't work out. They just seemed to don't do this stuff. That Peter Shilton nonsense was kind of a crap experiment.
Well, this reminded me a bit of Peter Shilton, but you're on the other side.
Yeah,
instead of playing
similar.
You're the attacker, but just
stupid.
Yeah. They're just silly, these games, and they're not for me.
This didn't have speech in it. Goal, save.
No, and it wasn't trying to whip up some kind of horrible xenophobia.
Yeah, it didn't do that. That's, to be fair, it's too jovial for that. Like, hey!
It is. It's way too jovial. It's like, yeah, it is. Anyway, I just got annoyed with it. There we go. I think that's our first lot of games done.
It is.
So, Repton 3, Blood and Guts, Chameleon, Street Machine, and Footballer of the Year. There you go. It's varied, isn't it? Varied this week.
Yes, it's a strange old month, the merry, merry month of March. Beware the Ides and games of March.
Yeah, because there's not much to write home about. There really isn't. Right, so we're going to take a break. We'll be back shortly where we're going to have an excerpt from our chat with Chris Abbott. Do you want to say a little bit about what we sort of chat about? It's more of your kind of area of expertise.
Yeah, it was just a chat really about the merry adventures of Chris Abbott and the C64 audio stuff that he's very much involved with, all the way from the very early days and his pioneering work around the live events, all the way through to the current Kickstarter campaigns and things that he's got going on, and just a general chat of everything in between. We even talk about arcade-style sound chips. Now, that doesn't sound particularly interesting when you say it like that, but believe me, it's quite interesting stuff, and he's a lovely guy as well. So it was nice to just get some time away from him to chat because he's a very, very busy guy.
It is, yeah. And we also find out what it's like to be Rob Hubbard's butler.
We do indeed.
So lots of sort of things. So just hear a snippet of this. If you like what you hear, you want to hear the full thing, you know where to go. patreon.com/Zapped to the Past. Sign up your spondoolies and for price of a pint. And then you can hear the rest of that. And also come join us on Discord and all that kind of thing.
Yes, do.
So we'll leave you with that. Have a listen to that. And we'll be back after that where we've got our last set of games from March 1987. So we'll see you in a bit.
Loving spoonfuls to our sponsor, davidhearnwriter.com, where you'll find bargain books, ebooks, and audiobooks. Let's hear a sample from his incredible audiobook, Starfarers and Tharnians in Space, narrated by the one and only Tim Valencia.
Poppy raised her voice. Navigation's offline. I'm trying to get the damage under control. Elvin, help me out here. Elvin was frozen. I don't want to die. I haven't even seen the new Atom Bender model yet. And I want to. She takes you to new places, the ad said. He wondered about that. Yes, she was a tempting mistress. However, there was some candy aboard this ship he'd never had the chance to get up close and personal with. The core of this ship was highly radioactive, but some things were worth dying for. Deacon snapped. Someone take the cannon. Poppy, turn that infernal thing off. Bo looked about, shaking his head. What cannon? It's gone, mate. Gone. Just like us. Last man in Gallagher, and we can't fire.
Wow, you've got to love it, right? Visit davidhearnwriter.com to find out more. The following is an extract from our amazing interview with C64 Audio's Chris Abbott. This is exclusive to the Patreon channel normally, so you're getting a sneaky peek. However, if you'd like to listen to the whole thing, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/ZappedToThePast and join in for the price of a pint. Anyway, enough of my yakking. Let's join in the fun and see what they're talking about.
I mean, I think I spent the year the years from 1981 to 1983 desiring an Auric.
You're the only second person I know in my lifetime has ever said that.
Well, it was at the time, actually, if you read through the weekly magazines at the time, it wasn't clear for some time who would win that battle, the Auric versus the Spectrum. And that's partly because they were releasing games on both platforms in almost equal quantities for a few months, but also because the Spectrum was really, really late shipping. There were immense distribution problems of getting Spectrums to people back then, which means that in Christmas 1982, I think it was, the Auric and the Dragon cleaned up because there was nothing else to buy.
I completely forgot about the Dragon 32.
The Dragon 32 was big in its time. It was big, right up until the point that the Commodore 64 ate its lunch. As soon as people had something better to buy, they bought it.
That's what we did.
But the Commodore 64 didn't start selling in the high street properly until round about September of 1984, after they'd announced price cuts in America in July. And it's at that point, in 1983, sorry. So September 1983 was when the Commodore 64 really started to enter homes and people started writing for it. It had been released in November 82, but it took so long to get critical mass. There were very few games for it, which is why everyone in the Commodore 64 world literally had a copy of Attack of the Mutant Camels, Rabbit Monopole, and Grid Runner. Because Llama Soft, Rabbit, and Interceptor were basically the only people releasing Commodore 64 games in the first few months of the actual machine. And Level 9. Props for them.
So when did Ocean kick in then?
Tail end of 80. Well, it was doing Spectrum stuff. It was tail end of 83, I think.
Yeah, because I said, I remember Hunchback and Mr. Wimpy being my first two.
Yeah.
When we got it.
Yeah, the Ocean kind of coincided with the Commodore 64 becoming a thing, even though they had a lot more Spectrum games. A lot more. Spectrum games were all over the place in 1983. So the Spectrum had about a 9-month head start on the Commodore 64 in terms of critical mass for games. They weren't even advertising for Commodore 64 programmers in the small ads until the tail end of 83. I was very surprised. I had to go through all this timelines because I'm researching for the Rob Hubbard book. And I had to go through every single weekly magazine that was printed in the UK about computers for an entire 2 years to try and find one classified ad he may have replied to, which would have made him write Blue Danube. But in the end, I think he got that job from just a panicked phone call somewhere around April 1984. So,
wow. So, because when I remember speaking to Ben Daglish some time ago, obviously, rest in peace, Ben, and he had made a point of saying that everyone looked to Rob as like he said he used the word granddad, I didn't, but because he was a lot older than everybody else, wasn't he, and was considered a musician, whereas they all never really saw themselves that way at that point.
No, they were teenagers messing around, even in their own minds. Martin and Ben and Matt. They didn't think that. I don't think they thought there was going to be a career in it. I don't think Rob thought there was a career in it as such, but it was something to do. He got interested in computers first, fascinated by them, and that led to everything else and gave him a lot more patience for taking risks. But he then had a very practical approach to computers, and also there wasn't a great deal of security in doing gigs, which was his main income at the time. So he thought, I'll use this computer to make some money. He'd been reading Electronic Music Maker magazine, and they'd been saying, there's educational software, it's brilliant, whatever. So he wrote some educational software, and then went into a school around about January, February 83, showed it to them, and they said, well, that's nice, but we've only got BBCs. That was that, really. And so he learned machine code, got to April, made a few phone calls, and then a book happened to come out that contains the genesis of his first sound driver, called A Companion to the Commodore 64. And that's where it all started. 13th of April 1984, that's when Rob Hubbard's music career started.
Oh, wow. That's absolutely fascinating.
Amazing we managed to track it down.
It is, absolutely. And you know what? It's great that some of this history is still out there. I'm still puzzled a little bit by why the first two games of that time that you said, was it that AD said that he had, was it Hunchback and Mr. Wimpy? Them early games are either based around deformities or addiction. Well, seems to be a weird theme for games around the early 80s. If you were a hunchback or you were addicted to food, you were going to be made into a game. Seems very
or if you're a space invader like me too.
Yeah.
So you've got so you had all of this Oric. So when did the C64?
No, I didn't have an Oric, but I used to sit in my common room ogling Orics because it had a decent. I put quotes around decent keyboard. Had a keyboard and had zap and ping in the basic commands, and that was it because I knew the Spectrum had a monophonic speaker. But a friend of mine got a Spectrum. Another friend of mine got a Commodore 64. We didn't play on that much. That was Radar Rat Race was the game he had, and that was very, very annoying. But my friend had a Spectrum, and we used to play that in the common room, and that was before I got the Atari. And that was when I first saw Manic Miner, and later on, and then Jet Set Willy came later, of course. But seeing Manic Miner and the 16K Ultimate games, because he had a 16K Spectrum and Manic Miner fitted into 16K, I think. Either that or we had it upgraded. Can't remember. But they were farty games, but amazing.
At the time, very.
Yeah. And they were an eye opener. So we used to take over the. I was at boarding school, so after we used to do prep. And then we used to go and steal the TV so people couldn't watch it and attach a computer to it.
Which would far more preferable, really.
But it would annoy everybody. What's that bloody crazy thing? You've changed the channel. Stop messing about with it.
Later on when I bought the Atari 400 in, people had more of a choice of games to play. That was things like Preppy and Seamus, which were the big two games that came with my second-hand Atari 400. And that was the most stunning music I'd heard up to that point, better than anything on the Commodore 64.
So what was the chip inside that Atari at that then? Because I know you know all about the chips because of your book, which we'll come to in a bit. But what was the chip in there?
Oh, that was the good old pokey.
The pokey chip, that's it.
And any sound you like as long as it's distorted.
Sounds like many of the rock bands I've been in.
It's lovely and grindy and crunchy and somehow very specifically Atari. It's the way they designed the linear shift registers, I think, that mangles the sound.
I don't have a lot of exposure to the Atari, apart from on the Atari 800 XL. Mm-hmm. I remember playing, I think it was Goonies on that, which took forever to load. And I'm pretty sure I played a version of International Karate, I think, or some version of that on it. And it was flashing a lot and the colours were going wrong. So I've got a feeling the machine itself was maybe broken, but that's my only experience of it.
It was a decent version of International Karate, and it had a decent port of Rob's music. So by Rob, luckily.
Yeah,
So
I never played on the Atari home computers, 400, 800 XL, any of them. No, I didn't even know anyone with one.
I think I only got a Commodore 64 quite some time later. My brother seemed to have every single computer ever going in sequence except the Commodore 64. He had an MSX, he had a Nintendo Entertainment System, an SMS, a Sega Master System, a VIC-20, and they all seemed to come and then stay and then disappear.
Yeah, my brother was my avenue for entertainment gadgets, do we say? Because he was a bit older than me, so he had income, and then we'd just go spend it on stuff, and then I would just take it off him, because that's what I did as the younger brother.
My brother was younger than me, but I don't know what he was doing to get all that equipment. It's a friend lent it to me. Right.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, Pete.
What's in that suitcase? Don't ever look in that suitcase. Okay.
So what happened? Why so you had your Atari? What was the switch? Why did you switch to the C64? What was it about that?
I didn't. I kept the Atari, but wanted the Commodore 64 as well. But that had to happen after it was a lot cheaper.
Okay. So there's nothing that sort of drew you to. I mean, obviously being because I don't know much about the sound wise on the Atari. Are they comparable? Is the C64 different? I have no knowledge of the Atari sound chips or anything like that, which seems to be your forte. So,
well, the SID chip is more powerful, but the Atari chip is a very good chip. 4 voices, nice crunchy sounds, very characteristic detune on the sounds, which actually creates the Atari sound. We know when you hear like square waves that are slightly out of tune, and it kind of gives a very interesting phasing effect. That sounds like rock hard on the Atari, as well as the noise generators, which were extremely kind of noisy. Everything about the Atari 400 was like rock hard and solid, and everything about the Commodore 64 was slightly fudgy. Even the SID chip. You get a rock hard square wave over here, and you get a more cultured sawtooth wave over there, or a pulse wave or whatever. And it's just even the same with the palettes. The Atari had this bright, in-your-face display list, rock hard pixels, cut yourself on a screenshot screen, and the Commodore 64 had shades of brown.
Is that an album?
I think so, by the Commodores.
Okay.
There must have been a point then. So you go through the Atari phase and you've gone through all that. So at what point did the interest when did it go from games to being specifically about C64 music for you? And then, because that at a certain point changed from something you're interested in to a business and so just talk us on that little bit of that. I mean, that little bit of that journey, because obviously, I mean, it might be 20 years between the two, but at what sort of stages did that happen? Did the Amiga ever come into the fray, or was it just you settled on that and you thought this? There's a lot of amazing music coming out of here. What happened? How did that happen?
I went to university in 1988 and came out in 1992, and got married in 1990. So the tail end of 1990 was mostly text adventures on IBM PCs at uni. like Lurking Horror and Hitchhiker's Guide and Bureaucracy. And then the Commodore 64, the Commodore 64 was still there. It came out so my wife used to love Bubble Bobble and Gianna Sisters, for instance. The music thing, I'd always been more interested in the music than the gaming, because I'm terrible at gaming. I just haven't got the patience.
I'm just sympathising with you there. Some of the games we've had to play for that podcast, I have every sympathy, because I'm losing my patience with some of them. They're so shit.
Oh yeah. Well, the Halo effect, the Halo effect wears off quite quickly when you actually try to play a lot of them. They're overambitious or bad controls, or there were a fair few decent games though. Luckily, Whizball, Paradroid, the International Karates, especially IK Plus, which was just amazing.
Was that the first Hubbard tune you heard? Then was it? What was the first one? Did you go right back to the beginning of, or when did it first cross your radar with the Hubbard track or a?
It would have been Thing on the Spring in a computer shop in Leicester.
Ah,
or was it Loughborough? Probably Loughborough, actually. It's very important, people. Thing on the Spring.
That would be another thing. That's another thing we share, because that was my first Hubbard tune as well.
Thing on the Spring.
That I remember. Yeah. I don't remember much. I don't remember anything before that. And Thing on the Spring was the first one I knew.
I don't know. It
Hubbard.
Might have been Action Biker. I mean, because at that time, Mastertronic was called was called Masterchronic in the school in the school playground, and they were notorious for the terrible, terrible games. And suddenly, Action Biker came out, and there was this Mastertronic game with decent music, and that was a surprise. But no one knew it was Rob.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think I did hear that before it, but I didn't know it was him. So it's this hearing it before and knowing who it was. I think it's because Rob Hubbard had been mentioned in Zap.
He wasn't a household name until Monty on the Run.
Yeah.
It's an interesting period of his life, that period after he'd written Monty on the Run, but before anyone actually knew about it. It was a lot of it was spent writing extra tunes for Mastertronic.
Oh, wow. Did all of them get used, or is there some out there still in the magical, mysterious Mastertronic box?
There are some that were unused in games, but we know about them because they were released as part of the 5 title tunes demo, which was commonly known as Final Synth Sample 2, but isn't called that anymore.
Okay, I remember that demo.
That's the one with proto versions of Woman and His Droid and a Formula One simulator. And there's a piece called in that called educational title theme, and that actually is the first original Rob Hubbard composed piece he ever did on the SID.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that sneaky little excerpt from our amazing interview with C64 Audio's Chris Abbott. If you'd like to hear the whole interview and also the exclusive interview with John here and join with our Discord server and all the other amazing cool things that happen on the Patreon, feel free to go there, patreon.com/zapttothepast, and join in the fun. All for the price of a not in London pint of beer. That ain't bad. Now, on with the show. Doffing of our caps to our show sponsor, DavidHearnWriter.com. Let's have ourselves another audio sample from his super cool audiobook, Starfarers and Tharnians in Space, narrated by Mr. Cool himself, Tim Valencia.
You're galactic pirates? I prefer the term self-philanthropists. A white, bulky, tubular droid on wheels with eyes like cherries and enough lights to double as a Christmas tree whizzed by with a rattle and crashed into a wall. Wright said, "You'll have to excuse 128. He needs a service, ironically due to lack of use. Seized up, I'm afraid." 128 bounced off a wall, recovered, then accelerated into Deacon's behind. Bo laughed out loud. "You've got goat droids!" Deacon fired a dirty look at the droid. "More like a white elephant, I'm afraid."
Wow, that is great stuff indeed. Visit DavidHearnWriter.com to find out more.
Okay, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that. You know where to go listen to more. I'm not going to say it again. We'll crack into our last set of games for March 1987. How many we got left coming up? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 games, and then a couple that we didn't play for reasons that we'll go into. Then a bit of a chat about some the editorial. I think we're going to chat about the editorial in this month's magazine because I think it's worth a chat. And then we're done. So let's get on with things. So what's our first game? Well, our first game is a budget title. It is $2.99. It is Zub. So Zub, from people who've made stuff before. There's the influence of Mr. Baguli, Steve Pickford, all over this thing. It's a cheapy vertical Frogger type thing, I guess, in a sense. Although, when I thought about it, Frogger's vertical too, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I suppose, but this is seen from the side, whereas Frogger's seen from the top, so a bit different. Anyway, Zub. What do you say about Zub, apart from everything is called Zub? It's, in this world of Zub, a thief has absconded with King Zub's prized possession, the eyeball of Zub, and hidden himself and it on planet Zub 10. The king orders you, Sergeant Zub, to go and get it back. So off you go to Zub 10 to get the eyeball of Zub back for King Zub. Zub.
What's up?
Sub. There ain't no love and there ain't no news. They sing that. What this entails is a black screen. A really black screen. And you play some weirdly, strangely humanoid type creature, Zub, Sergeant Zub.
Zubby.
And Zub. And you got to jump up to so there's a black screen, and then you can wander. You've got a platform. You can walk along at the bottom. You can only walk so far before a sort of force field just appears and stops you going any further.
Yep.
So somewhere along this point, you'll see a platform above you, which you can jump onto. Only jump on it from right below, because if you try and do the jump from the side, you'll overhit it every time, because again, it's one of those massive jumps. Once you get onto this, I was stuck for a while figuring out what to do, because you have to crouch, and then once you crouch, you can then control that platform left or right. So you then move it to the right, where you'll see another, move it to the left or the right, where you'll see another platform. Go underneath it, jump up to that, crouch, move it left or right, find another platform, jump up across the blackness of the black, and that's it, until you get to the top, where there's a teleporter. There is a creature, a singular creature in this world that just bothers you. It reminded me of an annoying wasp.
Yes.
Until you shoot it, where it then flies up for a bit more before coming back to bother you. Literally like a wasp who has taken a shine to your beer on a hot summer day. That's what it felt like. It felt like being bothered. So I hate wasps. I literally hate wasps. And I hate being bothered them on a hot summer day. A game that reminds me of one of my worst horrible feelings of having your hot, nice summer day ruined is not a game I'm going to take a shine to. And I didn't take a shine to this, because there's jack all to this. You just jump up onto the platform and repeat. Shoot the thing, it buggers off, comes back. The higher you get to the top, the quicker it comes back. You go to a platform, then there's a map screen. You can move about this map screen to another world, which looks exactly the bloody same, except it has a different single colour sprite bothering you. That's it. The animation was too fast on Zub. I don't know if it was sped up something, but I tried slowing it down, but I don't know. I looked at a video online and it seemed the same, so clearly not. The David Whittaker tune is 40 seconds of neither here nor there.
Good description.
And the game itself gets very boring very quickly. To me, right, this felt like half an idea. It felt like half the game was missing.
Yes. Yeah, I felt that.
It felt unfinished. There's an overly busy title screen.
Yeah.
With everything scrolling. Everything seems to be running at like warp speed. Like animations, the title screen, and they mention it in the review, so it's I think it's meant to be like this. It has a really annoying problem as well, in that you can press fire to start the game, even though after every game it defaults back to the keyboard controls.
Oh, damn.
So if you press fire on the joystick to start the next game without reselecting joystick controls, you're playing it with the keyboard.
Oh, damn.
And it just takes ages to die, and there's no reset, because that creature, like a wasp, never quite hits you. It just sort of buzzes around you like an annoying buzzy wasp. And so every now and again it might hit you and then you're dead, but it takes a while to die. There's nothing here. It feels like the levels, like the background, it just feels hollow and empty and like undesigned. Because it's like, we've got an idea where you jump up across platforms. All right, and then? Well, what do you mean, and then? No, you need more. No, we don't. We'll have a wasp. It's a chore to play this, and it's just lacked any real incentive, and I just didn't want to retrieve the eyeball of Zub for King Zub. It was stupid and boring and undesigned and empty and pointless, and I did not like Zub. Got 38%, which I think is too generous. How did you find your time in the realm of Zub?
Oh, the same. I thought the only thing I could say, the graphics were quite nicely realised. Everything else, game, boring.
But there's barely anything of them, is there? It's just the main sprite.
Yeah, the presentation, it sort of starts with, so-and-so presents. It's got kind of a nice opening vibe. That's it, though. The game itself is dull, uninspired crap. Just rubbish. Just jump up and avoid stuff now and again. Rubbish. I'm just not sure there's much more to say about it. It's such a game of nothing. It's just when you first start the game up, it's a void. You're in like a little nicely drawn thing in a void of darkness. And that kind of sums up the entire game. It's just a game it's like a light bulb being switched on and off in a dark room. That's all there is to it. Just on and off, jump up, go up, move left a bit, go up. I mean, I liked the Zub thing, the character, the way it was drawn, because it's that high-resi stuff, and I quite liked the detail on it. Everything else was just, I'm not sure that any other thought was even put to it. So, no, I haven't got a lot to say about it, because there's not a lot to say about it.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, it's half a game.
It is. It's not even that. I think it's just...
It's unfinished. It's like there's a plan there to do other bits. And it's like you could maybe imagine doing different things in the different... But you just don't ever seem to do anything different apart from just jump up the bloody platforms.
No, someone had an idea, I think, and someone had drawn a thing on a napkin, and that's as far as they got with it.
Yeah.
And it feels like it was, I'll just release that, you know what? We've got this character, make him jump up. All right, what else?
Jump up some more.
You know, it's only going to be $2.99, so, you know, doesn't matter.
Yeah, just put an annoying wasp in it.
Yeah, no, I didn't find it inspiring, or in fact, it's uninspired and boring. And just like I say, it's just a game that's in the dark. Literally, it keeps you in the dark.
Yes.
The players in the dark. Everything's in the dark. It's just dark.
Yes, it is sub-zub.
Yeah, sub-zub.
Sub-zub. There you go. Terrible. That's Zub. Let's move along. Next one's interesting for reasons. I'll leave. Maybe you can speak about some of those reasons, Graham, because tell us or talk to us about Knucklebusters.
Yes, Melbourne House. Dun, 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 Melbourne House. Matt Sneap made this from our friends at Melbourne House. So this is just another Melbourne House blocky fiasco. Not even want of a better description, that is what it is. It's just a blocky mess, platforming mess of a thing. So you play Deke, or as Redfast Cal would say, Deke. Or Dick. You're a criminal sentenced to be turned into an android. Hey, Deke. So your sentence is, the criminal, and your sentence is to be turned into an android. Right? Why would you make him more... It doesn't matter. Why am I even thinking about the stupidity of this? Anyway, Deke has escaped from his cell. He's trashed the central computer control, and now he's got to escape to a safe distance before the self-destruct in the prison system goes kaboom. Deke's passage is blocked, which sounds very awkward, but it's not what I mean, by a series of robo-droids, or robo-droid cars, that will attack you on sight, of course. Lucky for you, you've got your fists and feet, and you can punch and kick your way to freedom, but as they hit you each time, they will reduce your energy. So the game is played across a now familiar left and right scrolling background of 3-layer platforms.
It's a triple layer platform. Triple layer triple layer game.
It is triple layer. It is that. So you can jump between and it's a good job you can jump between these triple layers on this game. Some of these triple layers, house doors, which you can go through by pressing the space bar. Seems stupid that, but there it is. Mm-hmm. So the pace here is the thing. In this game, you're just frantically running around like a maniac because, of course, you're frantically trying to escape. But that is not a game mechanic, okay? That's just movement. The game needs to be that you have to do something other than run around and periodically just stand and punch and kick something until it disappears, which is kind of the mainstay of the fighting in this. So your sprite is the same as the enemy sprites. You're a different colour. I think that's lazy. They are absolutely relentless and really fucking annoying because they're just continuously getting in your way no matter what. And I suppose that's the purpose, but they're not really doing anything other than just getting in your way. So you have to sort of scoot up and down, really like fly up and down the levels and run left and right in a kind of mad, frantic way. There are objects to find along the way. Some of the doors are locked. There's energy scattered around which you can pick up. You won't really notice any of that because you're just diving around, just periodically standing and just having And when I say fight, these aren't fights. You're just waving your leg at someone until they disappear. Because that's all it really is. These are not fights. There's no impact from the things you do. It's not like you stood there and you're really slugging it out with somebody. There's no thought. There is no thought. That is a key problem with this game. There is no thought to the combat. There is no thought to the gameplay. There is no thought to the way this looks. There is no thought in this other than someone thought running would be good. Because that's as much as I could gather from the gameplay. So you go through doors periodically, and you just end up in more triple layer running around. You're just running around a lot, and that's really this game, running around. I had a really weird Judge Dredd vibe about this game, and I wondered if this, and I haven't looked into it, but I wondered if this was another Judge Dredd game that never was, because it sort of looks a bit like their actual Judge Dredd game from Melbourne House, and the characters in it kind of have a Judge Dreddy type vibe. Anyway, if it is or it isn't, it doesn't matter, because either of those games were, turds and stains on the rug. So it just feels like this was a game that was developed to a point, and then they just went, we'll leave it running around. Why not? Let's just have it running around. Which, as I've said before, does not a game make. There is no game in this, it felt to me. Presentation-wise, this is quite a bit demo logic to the presentation. When it starts, you get a great big scrolly thing, so it kind of looks a bit demo-y. There's clearly someone has watched a lot of early C64 demos and been heavily inspired by the scrolling text and things that are in them. So it feels totally presentation over substance, and that leads me to the soundtrack. So presentation-wise, there's a lot of demo logic to this, and it feels like there's a lot of more presentation of over actual game substance, which leads me to the important thing here, because that's the soundtrack for this. Now, this is Rob Hubbard, and I think it goes without saying that the Knucklebusters music is truly extraordinary and exceptional. In any stretch, in any game it would be, but this is an extraordinary composition. Both the opening music, which is a really good sort of powerful sort of beat, heavy, almost breakbeat, early sort of block beat kind of really powerful dance sort of power thing. Really thunderous kind of drums and really and compelling and really gets your attention. All of the in-game music, which is an astonishing 17-minute, it's just extraordinary 17-minute original piece of music that does not belong in this game in a million years, but it's there. It completely operates in a different realm to the actual game you're playing with the music on. It just doesn't make sense in any world. These two things are not compatible. What you see and what you are doing is not compatible with that music. The music is too good for this game in every respect. In fact, the opening music of the game would have been better in-game. It makes no sense that this is, because I don't believe you'll ever finish this game in 17 minutes. So really, it's kind of an excuse to listen to this amazing music. Even the high score music in this is brilliant. So the soundtrack is just unbelievable for this. It's arguably, I think, one of the greatest C64 pieces of music of all time. It's certainly up there with Rob Hubbard's absolute extraordinary best, because it is completely unique and individual and different. It's just a pity it's in this game, because it's nothing to do with this game. And it can't elevate this game either, because the sad thing is that it's great music, but not great for this game. Doesn't suit it in the slightest, in any way, shape, or form. It's just not. The idea of Knucklebusters and this being this music, and this music being in this game, and this game being what it is, none of that works. So the game, crap, very poor. It beggars belief these things are locked together with everything, but the music, well, that's one of the greatest C64 soundtracks of all time. It's just weird that it would be here and that you would find it here in this game. Now, others come along, other soundtracks and other composers come along. Don't get me wrong, that's why I say it's one of the greatest C64 soundtracks of all time, because believe you me, it doesn't herald a new era of music. Some other musicians come along and do really amazing things. We haven't even reached the Tim Follins, Ghouls and Ghosts and stuff like that yet. But this is, at this time, brilliant. But this was $9.95, this game. It seems like a lot of money to pay for a soundtrack.
Yeah. Yeah. Melbourne House, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's my take on it. Great music, amazing music. Everything else, what a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah, simply one of the biggest missed opportunities on the machine, isn't it? What could have been what could have been a decent brawler type affair is let down at almost every stage by poor in-game design decisions and shoddy implementation.
Absolutely.
The presentation is first class. The title screen is great. It's big scroller, and that comes from Matt and Sai. I understand.
Oh, of course it is. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Who are the demo people?
That's right.
So Matt Sneap, I believe it's him, and I've always thought it was him. And it looks at him, and there's a comment on Lemon 64 saying you should have stuck to CompuNet demos. So I'm Matt Sneap. I'm guessing it's him. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
It could be.
But it stinks of a demo maker making a game.
Yeah.
It looks like a demo because it's all demo.
Yes, it is.
If this had been a demo, you can see it. And that opening title screen and all the presentation, the two huge scrolling things, the visual of that joystick moving up through the middle. It's beautiful. It's lovely presentation. And even like when the game starts and you get that nice text bit sort of explaining what's going on and all the kind of sci-fi nonsense and stuff like that, and then the game starts and you realize you can make demos. You're a good coder, but you have no design abilities really. That's a shame, because I don't mind the visuals, at least lazy sprite design, because they are the same. The backgrounds are okay. There's nice visual touches to this, but the gameplay is just dreadful. It's totally limp and worthless. Like you said, 3 levels, but different coloured levels. All about the same. Looking for doors, what stupid androids get in the way. And when the fighting is, but it's not fighting, is it? You just hold the fire button and push right or left. They just wait until they blow up. But there's no indicator of how weak they are or anything. And and this is the worst thing, as soon as you destroy anything, they're instantly replaced. There's just another one.
Yep.
And progress is constantly hampered. There's no real idea of where you're going and what you have to do. It felt like a poor man's... The closest thing I could say to this sort of thing is like a poor man's Mission AD.
Yes, actually, it is. I meant to say that, but there is a kind of vibe of that, isn't there?
Yeah, which again, I think you're right in your Judge. I think you're right in your Judge Dredd, Mega City 1, 2000 AD vibe as well. I think that's a good call as well. But then I think Mission AD had that 2000 AD Mission AD. There's a sense of that sort of futuristic city running around and things going on, and this does have that. But I think the way that the speed at which everything runs around, because Mission AD was fast, but Mission AD didn't annoy you with androids in your face all the time.
Nope.
And it is so annoying because it has that music. It has that music. One of the best pieces of Hubbard music ever.
Yep.
That title screen, like you said, it's just...
It's just brilliant.
And kicks in. Boom, boom. It's just ace.
Yeah.
And then that music in game, that slow build. Bow, 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 dun, 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 dun,
It's
dun. It's just ace. And it's a piece you can just sit and listen to, which is what I did. I found a platform at the top which no one could get onto, so no thing could spawn left or right, and just left it running for 17 minutes so I could listen to it.
That's the way to do it.
It's just such a massive shame. It's a badly designed mess of a game with some nice sprites, but an incredible soundtrack and little else. It's such a shame. It's such a weird anomaly.
Yeah.
That if somebody just stepped in with a bit of design now, this could have been a really good game. But could have been speeding up as it got. As that music sped up, make the action it's just weird.
Well,
it's weird.
Do you know what? Having worked with Rob Hubbard to a certain capacity before on a game, my feeling is a little bit that Rob Hubbard does work that way with the thematics of a game. If you give him the thematics, he will turn in music that suits the thematic of that you've given him.
He does. Yeah.
So I think he would have been given a steer for this, which is why I suspect that he was given a plan of what the game was going to end up in a dream world, and so his music is reflecting of that, and then the game became what it is, and so that's why you have this. It can only be that, really. But either that or something went wrong.
The game is one note. The game is just one note. It's one speed, one note. There's no build, there's no anything. It's just the same constantly, whereas the music is this. Can you imagine it? Right, Rob, I want you to do a piece of music. It's going to be 17 minutes long, this game. And it's an escape piece, and it's going to get more frenetic as you get towards the end, and more panicky, and more androids, and you want it to give that feeling of that. Right, okay. And then they just produce this. Well, I've done this running left and right, and that'll do.
Yeah, what a shame.
It is a shame. Anyway, there we go. Knucklebusters. Amazing music, and I'm sure we will be talking about that when we get to the end of the year and our awards.
Oh, I don't doubt that.
I think it'll be in there. Whether it'll win or not, oof.
So again, there's a lot of games between then and now.
There really is, yeah. Not the next one, though, probably. So let's move on. This is an unusual one because I don't really remember much of this. I remember the adverts, but I don't think I ever played it. This is Double Take. It's an Ocean game, isn't it? It's Ocean.
Yeah, I believe it is.
So this has a really complex plot. So the twin universe theory is true in Double Take, and the problem is that the parallel universe to ours is unstable and evil and ruled over by the dreadful Samink.
Oh, I thought Samink. Yeah, stupid.
It's Samink. What is it? I don't know. It's ruled over by something. Do you mean Samink? Ah, that'll do. And this Samink wants to invade our much more pleasant universe, and he can now, as a lab assistance experiment has damaged the space-time continuum, travel between the two universes. There's mixed physics there that broke my head a little bit. I don't know what the space-time continuum has to do with parallel universes.
Go and watch Primer quickly, you'll be okay.
Yeah, hang on a minute. I'm just going to get into the box, come out 8 minutes earlier, and I understand. Hit myself over the head and talk about it again later. So this physics-bending nonsense leads to a whole heap of chaos, basically. So this game takes place in the laboratory where this student, and I say student in the loosest possible term, we'll come to that in a bit, where it's linked. So there's essentially these two laboratories across these two universes. And what's happened is that various objects have been sucked between the dimensions, and your job as this assistant is to travel between the worlds and return the objects to where they should be. Okay, fair enough. So what we have here is a flick screen side-on floating shoot 'em up arcade adventure. Now each screen is part of the lab, or there's a particle accelerator as well through which you can travel. These are kind of similar on both sides. There's different graphical designs on both sides. Travel between the screens is via a vortex on either side of the screen. So I didn't understand why that was.
No.
And travel between the universes happens randomly or can be seemingly triggered by flying through a small rain cloud that moves across the bottom of the screen from time to time. I didn't quite understand the weather part of this. It left me thinking, why not just moving to the left of the screen would not just flick you to the next one?
Yep.
Why have this convoluted vortex-based mechanic of moving from screen to screen? It just seems to add slowness to a game that already doesn't run at a particularly fast pace.
No.
I have to say. It just seems odd. You supposedly play a student, but you look like an old man.
Yeah, I thought that.
And you can float. Well, not that an old man can't be a student, of course, but it seemed odd. It seemed odd. And you can also float around for some reason.
Yeah.
Did I miss a reason for why you're floating?
No, there is no
All right,
reason.
good. So the screens are filled with constantly spawning enemies. They're easily shot because you can shoot them. You have some, I don't know what you've got. You've got some laser or something. And they take off so little energy, it's just to be pointless and worthless. There's an interesting premise to this game, but it's just let down by a few things. The game, at first, it gets very dull very quickly. We say this about a lot of them, but this one really does. There's no real difference to any of the screens, despite the different backgrounds. So it's just the same. Every screen is literally the same. The same monsters spawn everywhere by the particle accelerator. So every screen, same monster spawning. Next is there's no easy way to know which objects belong in which rooms. I picked some up and I was like, there's some indicators at the bottom, like some particle things and some screen with some buttons on. But I didn't quite understand what they were trying to tell me. It wasn't particularly clear. So there's no like gap in the level. So like, I've picked up this. There's the gap. This goes here. Would have been easy, really. Just put a shape and it would have been fine. So when you do get the right object into one of the universe's screens, there's this particles, one that'll turn blue if it's got one of them in but not the other, and then green if it's got both of them in, and that tells you that you've done the right thing. I found picking up objects problematic. Sometimes it would pick them up and sometimes it would not.
Yep.
I didn't quite know why, even though I was holding nothing. The music gets annoying quite quickly. It's quite a twiddly piece of nothingness that just drones along. Okay, but some of the sprite work is really good. Like really good. Like this is quite literally some of the best sprite work I've seen on the machine.
Yeah.
Those little flying dragons and stuff, they're brilliant, and they're really sort of high res multi-layer sprite sort of thing, really cleverly done. But it's not all the same style. You're a big blocky medium res thing. Some of the monsters are medium res, but then in amongst all these things you have these high res really cool looking sprites, and the backgrounds are a bit of a blocky mess. So it's got this weird incohesive style to it all. This game is just, it got 48%, and it's perfectly average, and it's not terrible, but it's not compelling in any particular way.
No.
It just, and if they'd have given the game, I think if they'd have given the game the same level of thought as the plot, and there's obviously some thought gone into it, it could have been quite decent. A more easy way to know what objects went where, some more guidance around the trial and error, some difference between the rooms, rather than just being the same monsters every time. And it could have been okay, but it's still it's too slow, and it still probably would have been dull, and I don't get why you float, and I don't get why you're a 70-year-old student in this weird parallel universe nonsense. So it's okay. It's not something I'd played before, and it's probably not something I'm going to play again. The only thing I really liked was that sprite work. The rest of it's just a bit of a, it's just a bit of a nothing game, really. I don't know, bit of a shame. What do you think?
Principally the same, actually. There's a nice central idea in there, and there's some really nicely realised graphics. But the game didn't live up to the expectations of the premise. While there is some interesting challenge in there, maybe, and some novel ideas about the way the worlds interact with each other, it just needed more game logic and more attention to those things to make it more compelling, because that would have really helped drive it forward. What it ended up being was just some guy floating around, some professor-looking guy floating around, flitting about, shooting and collecting things periodically in a seemingly pain-free environment with really no more compelling reason to do anything other than that just because you have to do it, really. I think it's a bit of, again, it's another misstep. Just more, you've got a good game idea. You've clearly got the ability to draw graphics. Yeah, the sound's not very good. But just make the game rationale, something that somebody wants to do, and make that challenging for them, but not impossible. And those things don't seem impossible to... I think they're in there somewhere in that game. I think they haven't quite got the balance of the game right. And because of that, it gets tedious. It shouldn't really, but it gets tedious because there's nothing driving you, nothing compelling you in this game, and because of that, it tuned me out, so I found it dull. Sadly, pretty to look at, but vacuous of everything and quite dull, and just actually, in the end, just flitting about, not really doing a whole much of anything and not enjoying doing that.
Ironically, in a parallel universe, this game has all of that going for it and is amazing.
Yeah,
we just didn't get that version.
No, we got the single take.
Yeah, someone came the no take, yeah. Yeah, so it's such a shame that version does exist, just not in our universe.
Again, another mediocre score for another mediocre game. This is the sea of mediocrity we're in right now.
We are really in a lake of meh.
We are, yeah.
Which is a bit of a shame, and I'm not sure it's going to change with our last game for March 1987, but maybe it will. Maybe it will. Maybe you really like this. I don't know. Let's move along. Move along. And our final game, Graham, did you enjoy your excitingly titled Tiger mission?
Let me just get my recording out. This is a vertically scrolling shooter. It's another vertically scrolling shooter. It's called Tiger Mission, which might make you think you're in a tank, but you're not. You're in a helicopter. The goal's pretty straightforward. Destroy stuff. Right? Just destroy stuff.
Yeah.
You've got things on the ground which you can shoot. There's stuff coming at you which you can shoot. You've got, guess what? Smart bombs which blow stuff. This is just rote shoot 'em up stuff. You can collect extras by shooting things on the ground. You get a turbo speed thing. You got 3 lives. Your current level has to be restarted. I think this is one of those weird ones that started halfway down the screen. I can't remember. It might not have done.
Yes, it did.
I just put another dull, uninspiring vertical shoot 'em up. Nice presentation. Hints of demo in there again. And I wonder if this isn't sometimes some of these demo coders maybe are creeping in, who knows. But the game isn't great. It's not terrible, but it's just decidedly average. It felt a little bit, and I don't know if it is anything to do with it, but it had a little bit of shoot construction kit about it. But it's just super average, boring, nothing great, but nothing bad. It's just a dull shooter, and there's too many of these. Go and play Terra Cresta or something that's got a little bit more about it. And this is just another one that's not going to make you feel great about spending £9.95 on it. The fact that it starts with a big black expanse, then you scroll into the background, tells me that this isn't programmed by somebody that knows how to start a game with their Y positioning correctly. So it just seems to be a lot of these games, and I suppose we could talk about it in a minute. And I suppose we're getting actually what we wished for, because some time ago we wished for more shoot-em-ups, and now we've got a deluge of shite.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
But you know what? I'm putting my umbrella up now. I'm just shielding myself from these shit drops that are coming out of the bloody game sky. Because this isn't great, and it's just, and the review in Zapped just says it all, really. It's just, they may as well just written the word sigh and just put pictures of them all looking miserable, which they kind of did. 51%, $9.95, a game that is no more inspiring than any other ones of these that we've seen, and probably less so, actually. Just, you know what? No more. If they're not really great, and the thing is, these shoot-ups like this have to be amazing now, because there's so many average out there that if they're not amazing, then don't bother. So I just thought, and I'd rather play Heli Squad anyway.
Well, we'll come to that in a minute. I'll mention that in a minute.
But no, I thought this was just anothershootemup.com. Boring. Move on. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's basically a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up by numbers. That's what I've put here. You're a helicopter. You fly upward. Every now and then an enemy appears and you shoot them. You can only fire 1 round at a time. Oh, yeah. There are barely any enemies.
Yep.
There are power-ups which don't seem to do a lot.
Yep.
You have some smart bombs that kill everything on the screen. The graphics are okay. The helicopter's all right. The music is okay. It is very easy.
It is easy.
Yeah, if you do die and you're transported back to the beginning, it does that thing of starting you before the level on a black background for some reason. The levels are pretty long. So dying is frustrating when it does happen, because they take a while to make your way through as the scrolling is pretty slow. It's competent with some nice programming at times, but ultimately dull as all hell. Things I liked, I did like the fact that you could shoot through multiple things in one shot, which is kind of handy because you can only shoot 1 shot at a time. So you can't have multiple shots. And the fact that the enemy bullets are sprites, not characters, so are quite smooth.
Yes.
Which is quite nice. But yes, it is what it is. But I do remember playing this and thinking this back then. And essentially, this is what inspired me when I got Shoot 'em Up construction kit to make Heli Squad. Because my inspiration was, I'm going to make a better vertical scrolling helicopter shoot 'em up than this, because I know you can do it. There was the Tiger. What's the Tiger one in the arcade?
Ooh, I don't know.
There's a helicopter, vertical scrolling helicopter shoot 'em up. It was quite thingy. I don't think it was out there. But I was just destined. I was like, you know what? Helicopters are easy to draw. I'm not a great artist. And some of the graphics in the game I made were terrible. But those huts, oh my God, I don't know what I was thinking with that perspective. But I was damned making it. I don't care. I'm going to make it more fun. So mine had jets and tanks and all kinds of stuff and the helicopters flying at you and stuff like that. So the problem with this is it's just dull. It's really empty. And it's like a shoot 'em up. It's like a Sunday shoot 'em up.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if someone was to design this sort of thing and go, it's a shoot 'em up to play on a Sunday, and you don't want a lot of thing, and you go for a bit of a drive, and you go for a bit of a fly, and you shoot some things because there's not much challenge. There's 4 levels. You could, I think I got to on my first go. I think I died the first time on level 3, and then I was like back to the beginning. I was like, oh, I'm not sure I can be bothered anymore. So maybe this would last you for a long time because you need to build yourself up to going through it all again. And it's not anything, is it? It's just a whole lot of bland meh. It's by the same people who made Vikings, by the way.
Yeah. Well,
Keller Line,
probably
who were
used the
new
same
on the scene
engine.
at this point. Yeah, probably. I mean, and I get your demo thing. It's smooth, competent, but ultimately empty and vacuous and dull.
Yeah.
And,
Well, we've said those words so many times now.
they're losing all meaning.
Yeah, they are.
This is losing all meaning, but I don't see an end to it at the moment with some of the games I know we've got coming up. It's like, see how it goes. There you go. That's your last game for March. There was a lot of games, 29, but not a lot of quality.
No, all very uninspiring in the whole, really. Tragic.
Yeah, so just a quick, when I rounded up, I'm not going to round up what we looked at in the first one because there's not much of note there. So Zub, Knucklebusters, Double Take and Tiger Mission are our last few games for this month. We're going to have a quick discussion about things. There were a couple of games that we didn't look at for a couple of reasons. Now, I didn't get a chance to play. I had a quick look at it, just a very brief look at it just to make sure it worked, but I didn't get time to go into it. The first one was Portal. And this was £20. It came on, 5 discs or 5 discs size or something. Yeah. But you got a chance to have a play at it, didn't you? So
I did.
Do you want to? What was it? I mean, what
Portal is essentially an interactive novel, and it's a story. Well, without going into the story, because I'm not going to dive into it because we're not going to cover it in massive detail. But it's essentially telling you a story through sort of a windows and icons and a sort of a UI experience. So sort of click into things and bits of the story reveal themselves and you kind of piece it together. And it's driven by a central narrative imperative. So it's not like a choose your own adventure where bits of the story will come and you can choose a sort of left or right. And it's not like that. The story just reveals itself as you work your way through this, click into these different sort of computer sections, and as you read more of it, sort of you click on something else and that reveals a bit more, and it slowly reveals an entire sort of story arc to you. It's got a nice vibe to this game. So it hasn't got a lot in the way of graphics and sound, obviously. It's just got some nice sort of Windows icons and some really kind of simplistic but stark sounds. And now the best way I can describe the way this feels when you look at it and when it loads and the way it sounds and everything else is if you imagine, I don't know if you saw, well, I know you must have seen it, the Chernobyl series, TV series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, if you imagine the soundtrack to that is on the whole kind of sort of grating sounds and sort of deep synth rumbles, and that's the kind of sound effect scape it's got in this. So you're reading these sort of parts of the story as they piece themselves to you, and those sounds come on and you're clicking in and out of these different data banks, and these data banks contain little bits of the story and you piece it together. So I thought it was quite an interesting notion. Zap were on it's not a game tip, so we're not going to give it a score kind of thing again. I think it's a bit of a disservice to it. It is very cerebral, and it is a novel, so it's not just a story that you're just working your way through in an interactive manner. I'd never heard of it until we got to this issue of Zap. No. And I think it would have been something I would have really enjoyed. Maybe more now. Back in the teen days, maybe not so much. I might have sort of dived into it and thought, well, this is a bit boring. It's nothing to blow up. But reading through it, it's really nicely written and it's quite compelling. And you can save your progress as well. So it's not like you just have to do it in one sitting. You can actually save and come back and load your saves in. So I thought it's quite unique and quite unbelievably different. And yes, it's an interactive story, but we have those now, quite a lot of them. I'm thinking just off the top of my head, everyone's gone to the Rapture, and there's quite a number of different sort of game experience type, interactive novel type experiences. Probably a lot more now. But I remember finding those quite fascinating when they came out. What was that one that was done on the Steam engine, one of the first ones? Was it Esther or something like that?
Oh, Dear Esther.
Dear Esther. So Dear Esther type. And I find those quite interesting.
Vanishing of Ethan Carter, Gone Home, Firewatch.
Yeah, I find them quite intriguing as experiences. So I don't doubt that this would have been. It's obviously restricted by its 8-bit, but there's clever parts to this, actually. One of the clever little details that I noticed is that the loads and the disk drive sounds are timed with the way things change on the screen. So you get this kind of, it changes, and it adds to the kind of drama of the whole thing that you're reading, because the whole thing's about entering this kind of abandoned sort of laboratory and finding all these data banks you've got to work your way through. And it really does feel like that. It's quite good. So I would advise anyone if you're looking for something a bit different, in a sea of mediocrity in this issue, and with a great big 2-page editorial crying out for more interactive, innovative experiences. They've got one in the very issue, which they don't dismiss out of hand, but one of the reviews does kind of say, well, why won't you just read a book? It's like, I think you're missing the point. But if you get a minute, Aid, I'd go and have and anyone else listening, I would go and have a don't have to spend, I think it's over 5 hours in total or something like that, but you don't have to sit there for 5 hours. It's quite interesting. So I quite enjoyed my little bit of time I spent with it. I didn't spend as much time as I'd like, and I will go back. I did save, so I will go back. So good. Yeah,
I will. I do intend to have a look at that at some point when I get I think Jazz Rignall says that it takes 5 hours to get through the first disc, and there's 5 of them. So I can
imagine it would take a long while, because it's not like you're getting big pages of text. There's graphics on the screen, and it's like if you imagine like reading emails, there's a little bit of reading messages for people, and you have to go between different systems reading the messages, and the messages start to make contextual sense as you read, as the drama unfolds. It's a lot like, actually. It reminded me a little bit of Half-Life in that respect. Is that there's vibes of that kind of thing about it. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'll have a look at it. I do like it. I do like the sound of it. So sounds interesting. The other one we didn't look at was the other football game. Now this was Brian Clough's Football Fortunes. Did you ever play this back in the day?
No, absolutely.
I played a lot of this because one of my friends back then who had an Amstrad, he had it on the Amstrad. And quite literally, this game is great. It's really good. And it reflected in the review, actually, because the review presentation, 99%, hook ability, 96, last ability, 95, value 80, overall, 93%. It's £15. But essentially, this is part board game controlled by controlled by the computer. So it is a board game. You play this as a board game. And it's quite clever because what it does is, at the start of the game, you get given £200,000, just reading from the review, and what I can remember, and you get given a load of cards. You get told by the computer, this is your cards, and it's a team. I can't remember if it had, I think it's just whether it's just forward, midfielder. I don't know if it had names on them, but they all have a star rating. So once you've got your team of 13 and you've got your thingy, so you've got your star rating, you just add up all the stars, and that's the quality of your team, shall we say. So you put it in for the midfield, I think the attack, the defense, and your goalkeeper. So what happens then is, once everyone's got that, you then go through a round where the computer rolls a dice. You move around the board. There are 3 types of kind of square you can land on, and they could be financial stuff. There can be an auction where you pick the next player off the top of the thing, and then you can enter into a bidding war. And all this isn't done through the computer. This is just, I think I can't remember if you put your amount you want to bid into the computer when nobody's looking, and then it says so and so has won. I can't remember if that was how it did it. And you get luck, which like chance cards in Monopoly, should we say. Once all that's done, you've moved around, you can look at the fixtures so you can see who you're playing. At that point, outside of the computer, you can swap and trade players. So you build up your team through these auctions, so you start getting more and more. So you might have a midfield with loads of 5 stars, but, okay, I'll lend you my 4 star, but it's going to cost you this much for the game. So that all happens outside of the computer, but that becomes part and parcel of this game. Once you're done, you type in your star ratings, the games are played, and you go on and repeat. And you play through a whole season. And so it gets you might borrow a player off someone else if you're going up against the team. So there's 3 or 4 you're playing. It can get really quite, oh, look at his team. Can I borrow your star midfielder because I'm playing him? And it was great, and it notes it in the review. It's got a very socially interactive game, such delights as screaming, shouting, persecution complexes, losing friends, and falling to the floor and frothing at the mouth. It's a really, really, and it was a really enjoyable game. And it wasn't so much because it was on the computer, just because it kind of married those 2 things together, and it was just a really good board game that, like it says, your 2 star players have been killed in a car crash.
Oh God.
It's like, that could just happen, and you're like, no, and then you lose them, you're gone. And so these things can happen, and it's kind of that randomness that the computer could throw into it and have a bit more behind it. And it was just a really, really enjoyable game, and we used to play that quite a lot, and it was always a good laugh. It was always good fun, and so it was good to see that in it, and it's good to see it got a really good review, because I think that even now, if you had that, it's still a laugh, because it doesn't rely on players of the time. I don't think it's just stuff that happens in a football season, and I don't think it's kind of like what Football of the Year was trying to do, this does it better because it goes, look, no, it is board game. And playing it outside of a computer, having it be a board game, you don't even need to really be interested in football. Football's just the thing. Like, I'm not interested in property development, but Monopoly's all right, and things like that. Yeah. So it was really good. I used to enjoy playing that, and I played quite a lot of that. So that was the other one that we didn't look at properly, but we couldn't really because we don't have the game. So had to look at that. And that's that. I'll just go through the chart because then it'll probably lead into our little discussion that we've got lined up. I don't know how long it'll take, but we'll see. But what we got in the charts. There's no crap verts. There just weren't any. They're getting all right now, so it's hard to find. At number 10, we've got Konami's coin-op hits. I imagine Green Beret, Kung Fu, things like that.
Legend of
9,
Cage.
Do you know, it just reminded me, actually, that Ninja Master, which was two-frame training, was for Legend of Cage. So I can imagine that the guy from Ninja Master has gone on to star in Legend of Cage. In at number 9 is Footballer of the Year. At number 8, there's no up or down on this, by the way, so I don't know whether they've come in or gone out. They've changed the charts. Oh, they've changed them anyway. Number 8 is Micro Rhythm. Number 7, LA SWAT. In at 6, Space Harrier. At 5, 180. Number 4, Flash Gordon. Number 3, BMX Simulator, and still duking it out at the top. I think these are the same as last. Oh no, wait a minute, it says 2 and 3. God knows what's going on here. There is Paperboy and Gauntlet at the top 2 there.
Well, that's weird because it goes 4, 3, 2, 3. I think it means 1.
I think it means 1. I'm going to guess that Gauntlet's at number 1.
Yeah.
And so that's that. So, as noted, Zapped did have a big old editorial at the start of this issue, didn't they?
They did indeed, yes. And with some interesting things to say, actually.
Yeah.
I think the important thing to do is, firstly, is actually most of the, because it's basically it's asking a fairly serious question. And the serious question is, has the games industry at this point, is it stagnating or is original games lost? Now, there's a whole load of hyperbole at the beginning about the games industry history and all of that. I'm going to skip all that. Towards the middle of it, there's a nice sentence which I'll read out, which says, at present, and I think this sums up the article, at present, there is far too much run-of-the-mill software available, spawned by licensing deals that take the form of television and film tie-ins or arcade conversions. Despite the effort involved in producing such games, I feel that little or no thought goes into actually designing them. Most film and television tie-ins fall into 4 tested and exhausted categories: shoot 'em up, arcade adventure, beat 'em up, and platform game. Sometimes a composite game offers a mix of all 4 basic styles, all unoriginal and far from innovative. Over 100 licensed conversions and tie-ins have been released to date, and to my mind, very few tie-ins have been representative of the theme of the original on which they are based. And so this article goes on about that, the thematic of that what it's Zapp saying what is going on, because they, as we have played through all of these games, they've noticed that there's just everything's becoming mediocre. They single out Tarzan, Judge Dredd, and Highlander, I think, as at least 3 examples of crap games.
And Scooby-Doo. Games which we have also indicated that they weren't very good. They also then pick on a couple, I think they highlight Jeff Minter as somebody that is doing good stuff, and that's all right. And they also pick out some games we've highlighted for good graphics, Robin of the Wood, and things like that. I think the gist of this article is really them saying, because it then falls into towards the end of the article, it's a bit like, Zapp hasn't fallen into the trap like other people have, and and all right, I'm going to skip all the bits of the Zapp, rubbing their thighs and going, yeah, we're not, we're the bastions of truth and all that. Fine, if they are, that's not the point. We've got up to we must be well over 300 games played now, maybe more than that after way over that now.
So we've played all of these games all the way up to this point, and I think I have to say, luckily, I've got foresight because I know what's coming in some of the games that we've got coming up. So I know that there's Whiz Balls and there's Last Ninjas and there's other games out there. Now I'm worrying at the moment that my rose-tinted testicles, I was going to say that. My rose-tinted testicles and my rose-tinted spectacles. I nearly did say that as well.
A Freudian slip.
It was, but my rose-tinted testicles, I'm going to stick with that. I'm worrying that they may very well have complete, because a lot of these games I'm playing now, some of them I actually thought were quite good back in the day, or my memory of them is. And they've actually turned out to be really, really a lot worse than I thought they were. And it's just this sea of average that's developing. I mean, look at just in the last 4 games we've played, outside of Portal, the Knucklebusters, average, great soundtrack, but dull. All of them just uninspiring. And I kind of agree with their point. I mean, do you agree with them, or do you think that they're wildly over-exaggerating?
No. I think they're right, because I think it's easy enough at the time because we weren't them. So
No.
I read this at the time, and I think the thing with this editorial is that when I read it at the time and I was thinking, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying completely. And I think looking back on it even now, I understand it even more. The thing that it's the almost second to last paragraph. There's a lot of prescient stuff in this. And it's weird to see this in 1987. I mean, there's the second last paragraph that says, the odd ray of light, now and again, someone comes up with an original concept, an original treatment, or a theme. The trouble is, within a few months, clone upon clone appears, and another new genre is bludgeoned to death, diluted and absorbed by the idea-starved sponge that the software industry has become. That has never changed. If you think, like, because obviously we both taught game design and trying to get people to come up with something original, different ideas, new stuff, and I just want to do this. I just want to make a version of this. I just want to do this. I think about when Minecraft came out, and it was, it's digital Lego, we know, and there was another game before it, there was some games, but it kind of like did something different and had a whole different ethos of this create your own world and all that. And then there's just a plethora of these craft games and this crafting stuff, and you see that kind of thing. There's a thing at the moment where, it's not original, but everyone's jumping out. Have you played Wordle?
I've heard of it. I've not played it. But I've heard
but
of
now
it.
there's like clones of that just appearing all over the phone, sort of thing. It's like, just of course you will do. Threes, when Threes came out, and then you had 2048.
Yeah.
And this notion that, and it's interesting to think that there's this idea that everything was this brilliant sea of originality back in the 1980s and this birth of the computer games. Well, it really wasn't, because all it was the let's face it, a lot of home computing was just emulating arcade games.
Yes.
And knockoff arcade games, Puckman, Munchman, Invaders from Space, Garf.
Yeah. Garf.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of other defending things like that. So we've praised games like Drop Zone and stuff like that. But it's just Defender with the Spaceman, but it did some different bits and bobs. And I think that's the thing that I took away from this. It's just the whole notion that the industry, just because it got so big, so quick, so fast, is just running on this notion of like find the next big thing and then beat it to death.
Yeah.
We know, looking at hindsight, that the industry didn't suffer, that it's now massively multi-billion thing and gone in so many different directions that it's hard to discuss. But it's interesting to see at that time that this thing that we talk about, and a lack of originality, is not a new thing. It's not an original thing. No. It's there. And I imagine, though, that, there's probably, you might see this, it's easy to say this in games, I bet you're just ripping off Shakespeare. There's probably, this happens where the popular thing, the new thing comes out and then everyone jumps on the bandwagon. Yeah. But it is a shame that having played all these games, I think we're close to 400. We must be. We must be over 400 easily. Games now. Because don't forget, it was 200 and odd just for 1986. There was 150 or 160 or whatever for 1985. And we've already done God knows how many, another 100 or so this year. So we're just seeing this sort of loop of stuff just getting thrown. And I think the license stuff that this talks about is another thing that we don't really see much in the way of licensing games these days. But it's a real shame to see that this nonsense, the games that are made, the games that weren't, is a really good resource that you can look at now, because at the time you weren't aware of the Scooby-Doo Dragon's Lair type thing that was coming, or the fact that Knight Rider was 18 months, you said, in development. Yeah. And then what we got was that horror show with no sort of likening to the original thing at all. And I don't think that they were off the mark. And I think that this editorial at this point is incredibly brave. Yes. And incredibly, most other magazines are kowtowing and bowing and tipping the forelock to the publishers who seem to have all the power. And I remember reading it at the time and going, you know what? You're right. Because there was just so much crap. Because remember I said at the start of this year, when we started 1987, that this was the year when I started to drift away a little bit. Yeah. And I think that you start to do that. I mean, I was a 15, going on 16 by the end of the year. Like you said earlier on, 16-year-old boys get into different things. And stuff. And so, but that I wouldn't have done it if there'd not been this constant recycling of no ideas. I don't know.
It's all food for thought, but I think you're exactly right. I think it's funny how the principles of their understanding haven't changed. In fact, if anything, because you've got more avenues to release games. I mean, there are a lot more now, I suppose, but it's funny how the Android is famous for doing lots of knockoffs of games that appear on other platforms, and Apple does as well. And the mobile space has become very similar. I mean, we've said that, funny enough, I think we even mentioned that when we talked to John Hare briefly in the Patreon exclusive interview with John Hare. But we talked about that as well, and I know for a fact that he's often said there's an echoing, it's an eerily familiar echo of the games industry as it was at this time, is that, you know, and I think there's even a quote from him actually at the beginning of this article, isn't there?
Yeah, there are. And it's, you know, it's, you don't have to look far sort of thing. You just, I mean, Wordle's an example, Minecraft's another, but just the race for the battle royales that just happened over the past few years.
Yeah.
So, you started off with PUBG, and then you had Fortnite, and now it's 99 to 1. You've got 99 to 1 Tetris on thingy, which is, you know, an interesting idea and things like that. And so these are quite good. But this race to be, you know, a battle royale style thing, which Call of Duty picked on, and then Battlefield, and just the big boys step in and go, oh, we have to have a bit of that. And there's no, well, why do you? Why do you? Well, that's what everyone's playing. Well, make something different then, and maybe everyone will play that.
Well, they're not doing the things that are obvious, you know. Get Lionel Richie involved in the Halo series. I've said it for years.
Could you? Well, I'm hoping that when John Master Chief finally takes off his helmet, his head looks like the carving from the Hello video. That would be brilliant.
Someone's going to do that, aren't they? So I suppose just to tie in the loop on that, really, it's going to be interesting to see, because we know there's some more graphically intense titles coming up. We know that because obviously we don't. It's not like we're seeing the future. I mean, we lived in that period when this came out. Yeah. So and it's going to be interesting to see how some of those games now fare. You know, your Deltas and your ones that got some heavy graphic production values, your Armalites, as we get to those later down the line. And it'll be intriguing to see what difference. I mean, it's not that Zap I think has a very unique position in time and space in the games industry at that point, in a way, an influence in a way magazines don't have anymore at all. You know, now it's completely driven by the social medias and stuff like that, and even then they control all the noise and the narrative out there, really. So nothing really gets said about a game that they don't want to be said. Whereas here, you know, you've got this is a brave thing to do. It is interesting. And let's just see, well, we can refer back to this in a year's time in March 1988 when we get to that issue and see if there's a follow-up. We told you a year ago, damn it, get better. Or whether it's, you know, or things have improved. I'd be very interested to see what's coming ahead. I
think the thing is it's going back to the thing, you know, just to sort of, from my roundup, is just coming back to play all these games is how many games that I just don't know, or kind of recognize the name but never played. And so even back then and let's face it, you were getting turbo tapes through the wazoo, you were getting discs sent everywhere. There were so many games, but you'd give them a quick look and you forget all about them. Oh yeah. Having to look at them now in a more thorough review and play them properly, you know, you're just seeing that it's just dross. Yeah. So much. And it's business practice of the worst kind, which is just get some money out of kids. Yeah, true. And it's worth anyone listening to this. It's worth going back, finding the issue of the March 87 issue of Zap, going to page 7 and reading through that particular. It's called Shadows of Cynicism Cast in the Light of Experience, and it's worth reading that because it's quite an interesting take of a snapshot of feeling around what was going on in games at that time. So definitely go and have a read of that. We can always post a link somehow to, I think there's a link that you can get from Lemon64 actually, there's bound to be a way of finding it. So probably. I mean, and you know, it's not just a rant. There is the quotes from developers, Chris Butler, Chris Yates, John Hare, John Gibson, Roy Gibson, Steve Kane. Chris Butler's comment made me laugh actually, and again, I'm not saying it's just to pick out him out, but it did make me laugh because he's just like, I'm quite happy doing arcade conversions. It's dead easy work. Yeah. I thought it's fair, which is fair play, and I imagine it, you know, as a programmer that wants to just get on, do the product, you know, having a fixed set of something to reproduce has an appeal when, you know, has appeal. That's something I think we might discuss elsewhere, sort of thing, in a sense of, yeah, that's fair enough, but when the machine just can't do. Yeah, we're going to come to that, you know. We have already. Let's face it, Gauntlet, Paperboy. Wait till we get to Power Drift. Okay, if I must. I said I would. So there you go. Anyway, yeah, interesting editorial and an interesting way to round off this triple treat episodes. Triple treat. I got your Pavlov response. Yes. You can't help yourself. Right. What we got coming up next? We've got, it's a double episoder. A lot of games, but not quite enough to stretch it into 3. Well, we could, but we're not. What we got coming up? Aliens. Ooh, which one? We'll find out. The one where you control multiple characters. And the Electric Dreams one. The Electric Dreams one, yes. Okay. Arkanoid, The Big Deal, Delta, Explorer, Express Raider, Fifth Axis, Fire Track, Gunship, Hyperbole, Imagination, Indoor Sports. Now, Indoor Sports fills me with terror because I'm worried it's just going to be another version of Pub Game.
Well, I'm worried about that and Hyperbole, because Hyperbole has an oddly familiar sound, like a game set in a future space, and that's making me feel...
Hyperbole.
Like what's the other? Hyperball, wasn't it? What the other ones?
It's Hyperbole, yeah.
Now we've got Hyperbole.
Hyperbole.
Then we've got a Hyper Spoon, Hyper Knife.
Hyper Spork.
I'd like that.
Which is a combo of both. We're just doing that thing what the editorial said we shouldn't do.
I know. I'm looking at that. There's some arcade games in there, isn't there? Arachnoid and
Jailbreak. Jailbreak's an arcade conversion, isn't it?
It is an arcade, yeah.
Crack Out, so we might have a battle of the bat and balls.
Yeah, not the Battle of the Battenbergs.
Because we've got Arkanoid and Crack Out.
We have, yeah.
So they're both breakout variants out there. Leaderboard Executive Edition, Leviathan, Magic Madness, Masters of the Universe.
Does it Leaderboard Executive Edition had trees? I seem to think
it did, and then I think there's World Class Leaderboard. There's a third, which I think trees. Is which has full on woods.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, this only has 3 wood. That has 5 wood. Golf clap.
It's golf clap, and we'll discover whether it gives you wood generally if we play it.
Absolutely. Or simply weakened your iron.
Oh dear.
Masters of the Universe, I don't remember anything about that game, so I'm going to guess that's going to be crap. Murder Off Miami, whatever that is, that might be an adventure, I don't know. Prodigy, we spoke about, that was a crap ver ages ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Short Circuit, I finally got Thai boxing.
Oh, yay.
So the game within a postcard.
Yeah, I forgot about that, yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, Transformers, that's the Activision one, not the Ocean one. Void Runner, West Bank, and Zone Ranger. West Bank is not about the Palestinian Israel.
I was going to say, it's not, or is it?
No,
it's Agent Orange and the other titles.
It's not. It very well could be, but in those So, a lot of games to look forward to over the next couple of weeks. We've gone through a lot again. That was March 1987, and I think on that note, we'll finish.
We will.
We will. So, as ever, I have been Adrian Mills.
And I have been Graham Raddings.
And you have been listening to Zapped to the Past, and we will see you again next week. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, films and TV from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zap 64 magazine published at that time. We will return with a whole new batch of games and stuff to talk about next week. Until then, if you want to listen to or download previous episodes of Zapped to the Past, and why wouldn't you, they can all be found on our website at zappedtothepast.com, as well as being available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, pretty much anywhere where we can upload them. By the way, we do always love to hear from our amazing listeners, so if you'd like to contact us about anything in the podcast or beyond, you can do so by emailing us at zappedtothepast@gmail.com. We're also active on Twitter under @ZapTother, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and most social media platforms. Just search for Zapped to the Past and you'll find us. Oh, and if you like the podcast and what we're doing, please do like, share, review, rate us. It really helps. Something, apparently. The Zapped to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings, and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zap 64 magazine, the Zapped to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe, see you next time, and remember, we play these games so you don't have to.